All right. Welcome to Black Angus Reviews. Black Angus, of course. It's my channel. Duh. We got a great guest here and a great couple of supplemental panels with us. The gays community, and that white blizzard known as Snowdub Music Entertainment, puppeteer of Jolly Sort of Puppet, and our guest Ryan Kinel of RK Outpost. Start with gays. How's it going?
Oh, what's up? It's going very well as of late. Um, you know, stuff and things. Get on board with the gays agenda.
Nice. What about you, Snow?
Oh, a little this, little that. Loving the Ribbit and Bigot show, and yeah, just trying to put together this new gender check show coming soon. But I don't want to give too much away.
Nice. And our guest of honor, Ryan Kinnell. How's your day been going?
It has been going awesome, man. And I tell you what, it's not June, but I feel a lot of pride to be here, part of this gays community. So
Hell yes.
it's awesome.
Oh God, that was clever. Love it. Yeah, I actually was talking to Gaze the other day. He was kind of down and out, and I'm like, hey, I know there's like this emotional hangover after Pride Month, but you just got to find your way. You got to pick yourself up and keep going forward, and make it to next June. Um,
Yeah, you gotta
Only
move
10 months
on.
away.
It's always more back holes.
yeah. So yeah, it's great to have you on. We were just talking off air, um, and I gotta edit this title. Unfortunately, I don't know why I haven't figured out OBS completely yet, but whatever my stream is the previous week, that's what the title becomes this week. So I always have to edit it. It's annoyance given my computer, but anyway,
Come on,
Ryan.
you're just using Mara Jade for clickbait, you know.
I didn't even think of that. I don't really know the EU, but I'm intrigued. I'm having some good feelings for Skywalker with your content, exploring it. Even though I've kind of had opinions of like, well, they killed the EU, so like, what's the draw to getting into it? It's like, well, I love Star Wars, and I just want to, I want to know, I want to be in the know of what you super deep lore nerds know and or complain about with new Star Wars. So, yeah, tell us about yourself in case anyone doesn't know you. If anyone happens to not watch you and or Geeks and Gamers, and what you're about, why you're here, and what you hope to offer in the fandom.
Yeah, sure, man. So my name's Ryan. I just started a YouTube channel around a month ago. Um, actually, I met up with Jeremy and Nerdrotic out here I'm in San Diego at San Diego Comic Con, and we got to talking. Those guys kind of inspired me to just go ahead and start talking about what I've been, bitching about just to myself, I suppose. But so I've made a couple videos for Geeks and Gamers. My own channel is mostly focused on Star Wars Expanded Universe stuff, but really I'm going to talk anything pop culture related that kind of catches my eye. I also do some stuff on Sports Wars, which is a Geeks and Gamers channel as well. Big Chicago sports fan, and yeah, I'm really enjoying my experience in the Fandom Menace community here. I've been a guy who's lurked in the chats pretty much since the beginning. I was kind of looking for an outlet and some other people that agreed with me and what was going on with Star Wars. I really did not like Force Awakens. So when all the ramp at the Last Jedi was happening, I kind of wanted to listen and see what everyone else thought. And I finally found some people that agreed with me in world class bullshitters, and just kind of all took off from there.
It's funny. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I found Jeremy, this and that." It's like, "Oh, you're newer." Um, yeah, I found feminists via the bullshitters. I was looking up. I kept, to give you a backstory. I was talking to you about like money and stuff and what it meant to actually buy Star Wars merchandise new. Um, with all my financial limitations. So it's very personal. Aside from my son being named Lucas for George, what's gone on, and I kept looking up. I don't know if you know this, but Mike Zero used to be a reputable source in the sense that when I was looking up Star Wars news every day, any article, almost every article, would reference Mike Zero as the source. I was like, oh my god, this guy's got like he's
Right?
got moles. He's inside everywhere. He's got drones that are beating the Disney anti-drone drones, and you know, crazy stuff. And then the Last Jedi happens. Before that, I was looking up spoilers every day for month or more before the release, and then I heard them. Bullshitters are the first channel to really pop out and have the spoiler list, and every single one of those was true. This is like a month before, and for some reason I just kept clicking back on them, trying to find out more and stuff. And I don't know, like they weren't my style necessarily, but something just worked about them. It's funny looking back, being in Comicsgate now. Them talking about Spider-Man and Marvel. I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? Like Marvel Comics is cool. What do you mean? Like so it's funny, and I found EVS through them, and I kept seeing Jeremy pop up because of like the recommendations list once videos are in. So Jeremy's kind of like my filler content, waiting for more bullshitter content. And I met Jeff actually in Fourth of July, and he said he was pretty proud that I knew him before EVS. That he
Before he made
he
him famous with his comic book.
yeah before yeah, like Jeff kind of I would say kind of kickstarted him getting a following aside from his art, following. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, it's great to know someone that's got in with Jeff Hicks. I know Snowdub has a history with the Ghostbusters way before, with Jeff Hicks and the Bullshitters. But yeah,
Oh,
so
that's early. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
early.
yeah,
Yeah, he's one of the first channels I ever found actually when I really started seeing the wokeness coming into our movies, and that was really the Ghostbusters 2016. That's when it really started.
Yeah, I didn't like. I didn't even care about that movie. I could tell from the marketing what it was going to be, and I had absolutely no interest. Like I like Ghostbusters, but I didn't like it enough to go risk seeing that movie. It it really did kind of kick off everything early 2016, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'm probably the old man on the panel here. I'm old enough to remember going to the original movie, and it was a big deal when I was a kid. We all loved it. I had the soundtrack, and Ghostbusters Wallet, Ghostbusters this, that, kind of like, it was a trend. And so to see this movie come out was just a literal middle finger to all of us Ghostbuster fans. So yeah, I found World Class Bullshitters one day, kind of ranting about it. I'm like, hey, I like this channel. I think they had like 5,000 subscribers at the time. And then, from there I found, Jeremy Geeks Gamers and EBS as the Star Wars stuff progressed and got worse. So yeah, a little history.
Yeah, Ghostbusters, man, one of the simplest, sickest burns in movie history.
This
This
man
man
has
has
no
no
dick.
dick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm trying to think. I think maybe I saw Ghostbusters trailer. I'm trying to think exactly. It might have been Jurassic World premiere when I saw it on base in Fort Drum, or maybe it's Force Awakens. I can't remember, but I know I saw it around that time. And never saw Ghostbusters. Never had an interest to at the time. And I saw that trailer. I knew right from the instincts. I know the song. I'm like, I think this is Ghostbusters. And then I see Melissa McCarthy, who I already hate, and
God, she's
other
awful.
lesser women. Kristen Wiig's kind of different. She has her moments. She's been in some good stuff. She's been had some fun roles. Um, but I saw that, and the only thing I laughed at was Chris Hemsworth, which is funny because it's like fem power, girl power, and the only thing that worked was the
The
like
one dude, the manly dude
the
who's
dude
acting like
the
a
dude
little
that's
beta.
purposely written to be like like an feminist trope, like whatever the hell that was, uh, where it's like people are like, why is there this useless guy in this movie, like his character, and it's like that's what they do to women. It's like not really, but it's kind of
Wait,
funny.
was it their plan to make him the literal best character in it?
But it's funny because now we got one of the last bastions of trying to make film. It's decent, not having an agenda with like Tarantino. I saw what's that Hollywood movie he did recently?
Yeah, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
There you go. Yeah, and I remember hearing about this Margot Robbie thing and that question at some panel, and Red Letter Media's made a joke of it. It was like, "I reject your hypothesis," and I forgot that joke. And then I watched the movie, and I'm just like, "Man, I wish more women's roles could be like this." In this era, we're just like, "Man, that was so great. She just looked hot, barely talked, awesome."
Depends on the woman, I suppose. But yeah, yeah, I hear you.
Just to trigger people. Um, I guess starting off, we'll get into some Rise of Skywalker discussion before we get into the trailer talk and stuff and the speculation and kind of feeling the temperature now of fandom. About 2 years now after Last Jedi. I want to run through this first theory. Ray Shmi Walker. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So my idea and what I did in my video was because I'm new to comics, so comics is like a really fun, fresh format for me. Um, Thanks to content, thanks to Ethan Escobar and Jeff Fix and stuff, and it's helped me and like Gaze and others bond getting a war campaign. But I read Red Sun finally about a month ago, and then I hear this Ray Skywalker theory that it's going to be some sort of loop with time travel or some weird stuff, and it made me think of Red Sun because it's a loop story. It's just never ending. It's a cycle. And even though I don't think time travel generally works for a very linear told story of Star Wars, that would be a perfect zero sum game in the sense that everyone could lose in a way. Um, if Rey is Shmi, then that means no matter what she does in life, she's always going to end up being a slave that bears a cisgender white male before becoming enslaved in a worse state to the Tusken Raiders. Um, you know, so there's that.
And basically just getting essentially raped to death. Like, and
I
it's
didn't. I don't. I didn't really
pretty
want to
dark
focus
ending.
on that. I didn't really want to
Yeah.
focus on that point. Just it's like, well, she's a slave, but then she becomes a slave, and it sucks even worse. It's like she went from like nice Kentucky Uncle Tom to like 12 years a slave. You know, um, in this scenario. But then we would lose in a way our side because the neg against us would be like, oh yeah, well, Anakin, this Jesus wouldn't be here without the Mary equivalent of Ray, and so like everyone would lose. Everyone would just be pissed off, and it would just be a great way to just light a stick of dynamite in the fandom.
As if they haven't already.
Well, it's like completely. I used to say it's like Trump Hillary when I explain it to normies outside, not cognizant. And then I talked to John Talks one time when we did a stream. More I realize that given the religious quality of Star Wars from the intrinsically, I would say it's like Jews and Christians. Last Jedi is. I'm not saying Jesus is or isn't heresy. I'm an atheist. I don't really have a stake in the matter anymore. But as an analogy, Jesus is the defining factor. He's either the Messiah and fulfillment of this, old world religion that's run its course. Its prophecies are fulfilled through this Messiah. Now it's time to go forward and like kind of fine tune, simplify. Or he's a line in the sand and he's heresy. He is a false prophet. He's a false Messiah. There's no two ways. You can't. You got to pick one side or the other. There's no middle ground really, if you're in this fight. And that's how I see the Last Jedi. It's divided, not just like Trump Hillary. It's divided on like a metaphysical level about interpreting Star Wars. Um, and you kind of have this with comics. It's kind of dogmatic, literal versus living document type of interpretation, which is in Catholicism now with like the Pope and rules and stuff and social issues. But yeah, like, do you feel that way about Star Wars? Do you see that kind of comparison, like the religious schism?
Yeah, I definitely I see what you're saying there, and it, a lot of fantasy has a savior-like character. The chosen one and things like that. Um, I think that the separation that we see with Last Jedi, and it's so vitriolic, is a lot. you said it's going on in comics a little bit too. I think that's just the way society is headed nowadays. I think you have people that are more resistant to looking at any other possible viewpoint except their own, and they can't deal with someone else having another opinion. And it's on both sides. There's no doubt that it's on both sides. And it's like I read a study one time about basically like they called it conservative and liberal at the time they did this study. I don't know how much I split things along those lines anymore, but basically how both sides can look at an issue and just see completely different things. And I think that's what we're looking at now, because we see these things in The Last Jedi that are just in it makes it almost unwatchable. And you have other people saying that it's the greatest thing they've ever seen. I mean, both on one hand, you think both sides can't be right, but maybe that's just how society is going. These two polar opposite perspectives. It's very interesting. I don't know if I've ever seen it with anything other than The Last Jedi.
Yeah, not to that degree, I wouldn't say.
I think one thing that is kind of like it is Zack Snyder's DC universe.
Oh,
Um,
I thought you were just gonna say BVS. It's like, yeah, dude, Ultimate Cut. Yeah, I'm down with that.
yeah. So, well, and I like really enjoy Man of Steel and BVS. Obviously, the director's cut, not so much the theatrical, but other people just absolutely hate it. And I love where he's coming from and his perspective and his world, right? So maybe that's kind of similar along Ryan. Maybe this is Ryan Johnson's Star Wars, but to me, that's not what this is supposed to be. It's episode 8 of a saga. So I think we got Ryan Johnson's Star Wars, not episode 8 of a saga.
Yeah, let me see. I want to turn it to Snow and Gaze to kind of dictate what we're talking about before I get your take, if at all, about Ray Schmeewalker. But yeah, Gaze and Snow kind of touch on this little iteration we've had.
Oh yeah, let's touch on Shmi. Um, she's gone around. That's yeah. I don't know. I don't like it, and that's just me, I guess. I just don't like the idea. I don't like the idea of time travel in Star Wars at all. Just because it's literally every other science fiction fantasy trope. So that's kind of what made Star Wars different. That and the cool factor. But yeah, no, thank you. And I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you
Yeah.
said, we don't need a fucking Messiah Ray either. That's no.
Well,
Get
Yeah.
out of
you
here.
know, I would add really quick, Gaze. Fuck, I lost my point. Snow, go.
I was gonna say Shmi is nothing but a midichlorian whore. So spread herself open for any midichlorian that comes by. And I just can't approve of that kind of behavior. So I think that's a terrible storyline, rumor, whatever it is. Shmi Skywalker was probably in my opinion, one of the worst parts of the prequels storyline. So to bring her back involved with it, well, it actually kind of makes sense now. Yeah, we might want to bring her back.
You know what? I think it would be better if this is the other point I forget. It would also, and this might not make it quite a zero sum game because you got two negs on the SJW half of Star Wars, in this sequel fandom. You would have the Raylos who've been banking on Kylo and Rey. Turns out he's trying to bone his great grandma. So it's
Well, it
not
wouldn't
it's
be the
not
first
even
time.
it's not even conceivable in biological terms of because people don't get this, so they'll think I'm weird, so I kind of got to preface this. When I was going to college, I was trying to get a psych degree. My intent, and still intent if I go back, is to get a like sex therapist type of degree, researcher or what have you. So this type of stuff interests me on like an academic level, aside from being war campaign, aside from being comic skate gay and whatnot. It's just academically interesting. So incest has a ratio, I think, within rats at least, if not other animals. Incest has like a ratio of I don't know, 25% at most probability. It's just kind of intrinsically not a huge factor. It's not a detriment because you kind of have all these social cues, even on basic animal levels, with like scent and stuff, familiarity, where it's like you're kind of naturally just incentivized to seek your family as relations outside of society dictating a religion or anything else or morals or anything. So nature has kind of encoded itself to just keep variation forming. Um, but
We're getting deep, here, boys.
it'd
Yeah,
be
way
really
way
weird.
deep.
It'd be really weird if it was your great grandma. Just biologically, most animals don't live that long enough to have that fucking generations cross. But it'd be really funny. In this case, especially with Raylo, if she ends up being Shmi in a loop,
But what if
because
I told you?
Ryan said the finger bang scene was the closest to sex we've gotten in Star Wars. So make of that what you will with Grandma Shmi touching the Kylo's hand.
But what if I told you Grandma Shmi has the body of a 13-year-old boy? Then what do you say to that?
Oh shit,
Whoa.
Angus is all over that.
Oh my god. Yeah, I won't touch that one.
For legal reasons.
Probably a good idea.
I'd just like to throw out here anybody who would time travel and willfully rename themselves Shmi deserves to be, repeatedly backholed anyway.
Oh god.
Yeah, the Sand people would definitely line up for that.
I think one thing that makes this time travel thing makes a lot of people kind of roll their eyes at it right now is with what we just had happen with Endgame. And Endgame's kind of a weird movie because although I see it as a really satisfying end to like 10 years of story, I wasn't a fan of a lot of things they did in the movie, especially how they handled the time travel part.
Hey Ryan,
So,
real quick, never say satisfying end anywhere in the vicinity of Black Angus.
good to know. Good to know.
That's for your
yeah.
own protection.
Yeah, so
Sorry,
that's
the
one thing I
jangling
think
you
that.
hear is my ice and my whiskey.
Oh, there's mine. Mine's in a plastic cup because
Yeah,
I'm
mine's in a plastic cup.
Oh,
too.
mine's in a
Yeah.
metal cup.
not very classy.
Well, it's not classy. It's just this cup looks really cool. I'll show y'all. Let me turn on my camera really quick. I'm gonna go to Hangouts. Come on, camera. All right. So y'all think you'll have a procession? Like, ooh, that's slick. I'm waiting for the
It's
lights.
just like in an old can of beans or something.
No, it's not that bad. No.
No, it's a pear can. Come on.
Okay. Let me present myself. All right. So you see this really cool metal cylinder. It's like almost like the simple Grail from Last Crusade. But then you turn it, and there's like this little heart here. Okay, that little heart. It's because it's from like this.
Aw.
It's from Munchkin, which is like a little kid's like sippy cup company. So if you see the screw here, this is for a sippy cup where it's like one of those plastic things where it's like any point the kid drinks on it, it opens up to release the
Oh
fluid.
yeah, I don't even understand how those work. Magic.
Yeah, but it looks so damn cool. It looks like if you show a certain angle, it looks like it could be a Mad Men cup. It's just like ooh, nice shiny metal cup, whiskey, awesome.
You have no idea it's for a toddler.
An
Well, it
alcoholic
makes sense
toddler.
then.
But yeah, I'm pouring me some more rye. It's funny. I tell people, like I thank Ethan for finally turning me on to Mad Men because for a long time I kept seeing him like, I don't know, and then I started watching it, and I used to love Crown Royal, like the different flavors in my root beer when I go to the movies. I'd sneak in my flask. Now it's like that shit's like syrup, dude. I can't drink that. I need this dirty, nasty paint thinner called rye whiskey.
I'm actually drinking Crown right now. It's one of the only things left in the house I've got. I had a stream the other day where I finished off my Jack Daniels, and I've been so busy I haven't gone to the liquor store. Crown Royal it is.
Yeah, I kind of prescribe to the Don Draper philosophy of what do you have? Is like anything brown.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's a good one. I prefer rum though, actually.
Well, you are the gays community, so we'll admit that. But yeah, crap. Did you have your own theory or your own thoughts about the Shmi Skywalker, Ryan? Like, do you think it could work, or that there's something there, or is it just too hardcore people trying to figure out this movie?
I don't know, man. So uh, to me, right, when in Phantom Menace, when Shmi says, there was no father, blah blah blah. In the expanded universe, they explain that by Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious. Darth Plagueis, obviously had unlocked the power to immortality, right? In Palpatine's words. Well, what they were doing was they were. It's one of the things that makes midichlorians a lot more forgivable. Darth Plagueis is an excellent book that makes Episode One like way more enjoyable. And it was essentially Plagueis and Sidious experimenting with the power of life and the power of midichlorians. And in one of their experiments, they unwittingly create life, which is theorized to be Anakin. Um, so that is a spot that is kind of empty right now in the lore. How was Anakin conceived? Maybe maybe he's a Raylo baby. You know, I I, I don't know. There's so many rumors flying around. It's tough to know what to believe. Ultimately, I'm not too invested in this sequel era right now, but I think that would be the ultimate. Oh, J.J. Abrams thinks he's blowing our minds. That's their baby. I could see them completely rewriting the course of history through that.
Huh. Okay, okay. So this will get into something else. People are freaking out about the possibility that Palpatine is the actual overarching villain. Of course, my spoiler video. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched it. Three, two, one. Uh, the villain supposedly is someone we don't know. This overarching villain. Um, so it's not even Palpatine per se. My thoughts is that Palpatine makes a lot of sense actually. Um, for one, he's been the villain for two previous trilogies to varying degrees of involvement in show and tell, but he's been the overarching villain for six movies. Is it really that crazy that this last trilogy, he would actually be that? And you apply like this kind of Sauron aspect of like, oh, he transferred his essence, like Dark Empire. I read
Yeah,
the plot. I read the plot recently. It sounds kind of cool. I don't know how it's delivered, but I hear good things, so I'll probably read it. Um, but I hear this and it's like, well, people are so hardcore that like, oh, he died in the Death Star, blah blah blah. And it's like, is it so crazy if this guy could create the chosen one from across the galaxy on accident, immaculately in Shmi? Is it so crazy that he could shift his own body? His own presence into an orb, into a kyber crystal, into another body. Is it really that crazy in Star Wars if he got all these other parameters set? That's kind of how I feel. It's like, yeah, this might be a copy in Dark Empire, but like I don't think JJ had any part with them clean slating the EU. I do think he's a fan, but I think he's a fan to some degree with an agenda, just like all of Hollywood. So I'm willing to cut him a great deal of slack, despite a bad track record with other franchises and properties, and even Cloverfield. Cloverfield. People don't know, but I guessed it from the beginning, and then I found out it almost was. Quiet Place with John Krasinski was almost a Cloverfield movie. This was the John Krasinski Cloverfield movie that was rumored, that ended up
huh.
Paramount said it can do on its own, and it did well. Of course, it blew everyone's mind in China, and they got a sequel plan with Krasinski again. But Abrams almost had his hands on it. Maybe he had some influence. Who knows? Cloverfield was doing good for the first two movies. The third one was so off the wall and didn't really explain anything. We'll see if this fourth one can actually figure it out. But there's potential. I think JJ is an idea guy. I think he is kind of a Lucas to whatever degree, however minimal that is. I think he does have a creative mind. So I think he's trying to give us stars. I think he. It's hard to tell if he's part of the agenda at Lucasfilm or if he's playing ball because it doesn't seem like he's ever gone against fans. His one comment about you hate women if he hates Last Jedi or whatever, seems to be his response. It wasn't like he was looking to tout that. So, I'm kind of like, I think he's just trying to play the game right now. Maybe someday when he's old, he'll actually be like, oh God, that was an awful time trying to like walk that tightrope. So that's kind of where
I,
I'm at with it.
I agree with you on JJ and his. We haven't really seen him come out against fans, and he has a lot of works out there. He's got his hands in a lot of things, and you can't be like, oh, this clearly has a very woke agenda. At least not more than anything else that we have in Hollywood, right? Um, so I think that's a good point. I think he is a really a very competent director. He provides very appealing visuals, and he does have a lot of ideas. However, it seems like a common theme that he's unable to like. He can take a movie about 80 to 90% of the way, and it's tough for him to have a satisfying ending to something. At least in my experience, or it's something that doesn't quite all tie together. As far as uh, as far as I'm sorry, I forgot how we started the conversation. We ended it with J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, I sometimes sometimes I ramble. I'm aware. Um,
Yeah, Angus is a rambler. It happens.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
um,
Sometimes.
fuck, I don't know. I don't know. If
Well, I'll just chime in here and say this next Star Wars movie is going to
oh,
be absolute garbage, and
we were talking about Palpatine and his essence. That's kind of how I
Oh,
got here.
yeah. So you mentioned Dark Empire. Dark Empire was a story that was a comic storyline in the early to mid '90s, and it's very funny that we have this Palpatine thing coming up now because one of the criticisms, or not one of the criticisms, but when we said, "Hey, this isn't the Luke we know. Luke would never do this, right? Luke would never be this kind of guy." They're like, "Well, in Dark Empire, he turned to the dark side. Don't you remember that?" And they brought back Palpatine. How stupid was that? The EU sucks. So it's very interesting now that we have a bunch of people celebrating the fact that Palpatine could be back. And Dark Empire, Luke initially pretend. So there are clones of Palpatine that he's able to put his essence into. I agree with you. It's not that far fetched. We know they clearly have cloning capabilities, and we know that he's been involved in like trying to extend his life. Right, that's what he wants. So he's doing that. You have this Emperor Reborn that suddenly emerges, and Luke goes to him and decides the best way to infiltrate because he has tons of clones. He can transfer his essence at any time. He pretends to turn to the dark side to be his apprentice. And in the course of this, he nearly succeeds destroying all the clones, doesn't, and eventually is corrupted to the dark side temporarily before being pulled back by Leia and family, things like that. I do think it's complete within the realm of possibilities. It would it would irritate me because why did you get rid of all this material if you're just going to use it? That's the
Yeah.
frustrating things in expanded universe fans that they kind of stomped on it, and they threw it away and said we don't need this, and now they're using all of it. Pissed me off.
Yeah, I.
Yeah.
Oh, go on, Gaze. I'm gonna look over my phone really quick.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, that's an excellent point. A point I've been making for some time. Like they have all this material that they just flush down the toilet, only to go back and pick and choose from it and try to claim, as though it was their idea. But we kind of know better. We've read it, we love it, and fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm. I don't know. Part of me is interested in. I think I read. I'm trying to think what book. There's like a prequel mall story, and it's not just like one of the short ones. I know there's like a short one in a bigger volume or something. Um, I remember reading it. It's like he kills like a girl apprentice or whatever, and it like leads up right into episode one. That was pretty cool. Like, and I read recently. I know it's not EU, but the Marvel comics of modern Star Wars. I read the Darth Maul. I had the first like three issues, then I just fell out of like following it for some reason. So I bought the volume. Or no, I read online, and I had mixed feelings because it's like whatever you want to say about Disney Stars, it's like it felt like the writer or maybe Marvel, whatever, understood Maul pretty well, but it's like they didn't really take him anywhere. It's just like you get the character kind of motivation is just he's just pure fucking straight anger and hate. Um, and he just wants the best. Everyone wants to take out every Je- Jedi and be like, oh, that was easy pickings. I need something bigger. I need something better. It's like cool, but I felt kind of empty as well. Like he didn't add anything to him. And that's okay. So that's how I feel. Just a really quick side note. That's how I feel about the Mandalorian. People want Boba Fett. I want Boba Fett. Boba Fett's cool. I did a whole video about like why Boba Fett's cool, and I even used the prequels to justify like his whole presence and stuff. Through Jango Fett and that whole history and stuff. And it was fun. It's like I love doing shit like that you can go back to, not just news of the day. And I I don't know. It's with the Mandalorian. I feel like okay, you're trying to channel what maybe was scraps from Boba Fett movie with maybe going all the way back to Trank or earlier, but it doesn't feel like it has a purpose. Like it doesn't feel like we're trying to tell a story about this character who's a bounty hunter. It's just like, look at this cool bounty hunter. You know this armor, retard. You're gonna buy it. It says Star Wars. you know, uh, or sorry, it's making us like, you know.
Well, yeah, well, and that's one interesting thing that you have, or you had, I should say, with Star Wars. For nearly 30 years of EU stuff, was you had these. It's such a vast universe, right? We have going all the way back to the Old Republic, even 25,000 years before what we saw happen in A New Hope, all the way up to 140 years after that. And so not every story was based around the Skywalker saga, right? It's an enormous universe. And I kind of agree that that's honestly one of the reasons I was kind of excited about the Mandalorian trailer, because it doesn't seem like it's going to step on anything that I love. It's not going to ruin anything. It can just be its own separate thing in the universe. Whereas, I look at what we have coming up also on Disney Plus, the Obi-Wan. I see a lot of things that could scare me about that. What they could do to his character. So
I'm
I don't
hoping
know.
I'm hoping he's actually a the spirit. Even if they don't use the bite, I'm hoping the spirit of Obi-Wan we find out is actually a trans handicap woman of color.
Well, yeah, I mean that would be the only thing that would be right. We've had this hero dominated by cis white, or this story dominated by cis white males, and all we've had in these Disney movies are cis white females. So I totally agree that they should do that to Obi-Wan. Retcon Obi-Wan. I heard Leslie Jones is looking for a job now. She's not on SNL, so
She'd make
throw
a
her in
great transit cap.
there. Yeah,
I always love, it's like it could be better, I love doing that, and it's, it's like the normie thing, when you try to like we had this joke when I was trying to explain War Campaign. It's like it's a dong story. It's like when I try to explain Star Wars. I was trying to explain to my coworker who is a Star Wars fan, like the YouTube, like the Fandom and stuff, and where it's like who we are versus what are becoming my problems. Being Phantom Menace, like I'm not abdicating, I'm not becoming adjacent to Phantom Menace. Like I'm still Phantom Menace. I feel kind of like maybe I should be a voice for change or course correction as J.J. Abrams says or whatever. Of like I think we lost focus. I'm going to be a part of steering it right. Regardless of anyone else joins in, I'm going to do my part. So um, yeah, it's funny because I'm like, well, he's like, well, what's your problem with like the last movie? I don't know if he likes it or not. I didn't get to that point. But it's like, well, if you know Star Wars, like you had this, you had that, you had that, you had that, and none of it was anything even about Lucasfilm. It was just like Rose Tico, fucking Leia, Holdo, the hyperspace maneuver, which I actually didn't mind. I thought that was cool. It was just the fact that you had a whole movie that copied the Fast and Furious 6 airplane sequence that went way too long in a straight line. Um, you made that 2 hours of the movie, and then you ended it with a chick killing yourself needlessly when she could do a robot. Um,
I think the hyperspace thing is a huge issue to me as far as like Star Wars, because if this was a tactic, why wasn't it used at any point in time? In the prequels, you had literally armies just full of droid, operated, uh, ships. Like, if telling me you could just fly one of those to a planet or something, like that was like stunning to me that they did that. But as far as the rest of what you're saying, I agree with you.
yeah, no, I get that. Like, it has problems. I would say definitely going forward, or like, wait, how did no one figure out they could just kamikaze? Um, like, okay, my understanding of hyperspace travel is that, like, kind of, I would say science based, like real science, of like, I remember watching this History Channel things, like 2 hour thing about like the science of Star Wars, and how pretty much everything in Star Wars is bullshit scientifically. Like, the Death Star shoots 6 rays into one. Like, no, these are beams of light. They don't. No, they don't. When they cross, they just keep going. Like, nothing changes their direction. Stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um, and
but it all
hyper.
has rules, right? Star Wars has its own
Yeah,
rules.
no, I'm fine with that. Hyperspace, it's like, theoretically it could work if you had exponential amount of fuel, because like the weight creates more drag, which even in space it's like you're making a heavier thing go faster. It's a whole conundrum of math, and it's pretty implausible to even try to start up. But it's like Star Wars, inexhaustible fuel, whatever. This is the technology. Uh, I assume like if you're plotting for a point in space, your matter is still going to go on this line. So if you put like a brick wall in front of it, you're going to go through that. Now you can argue whether or not it would affect you or not because you're like gone subatomic, in this travel form. But like the Holdo maneuver was fine to me as far as like science and Star Wars, if you will. Like people complain about like the gravity bombs or whatever, and it's like you realize in Empire when the ships get shot, they just start falling backwards. And it's a visual narrative to like show you like, oh, they're disabled, but it doesn't make any sense in space. Like they should just be stuck there. So like
Yeah,
Star Wars
depending on
space doesn't make
depending on your
sense.
relative. Yeah, yeah. Depending on your relativity to like a gravitational source. Yeah, I agree.
It's like every time a ship gets disabled, like a Vader ship gets disabled, and it just starts falling into the Death Star. I guess the Death Star has gravity, but it's like it seems that it doesn't really do anything to you unless it chooses to pull you in with like its technology. So,
Like
uh,
how much mass does a beam of light have that it could knock something in a vacuum off course? Like those kind of arguments. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's like I don't like getting that, and uh, there was some stuff I thought about. I can't think of it at the moment, but there's some stuff where it's like I was having this argument about some point, and it's like I hate pulling this because it sounds like SJW is just discrediting you, but it's like you realize you're talking about science in a series where the Death Star and sabers are powered by magic rocks that have beams of energy that have a limited range for some arbitrary reason, and the heat source that can melt through super metal but not ignite everything around it. It's like you want to argue science, but then I bring you science, and you're gonna look stupid. So, like, you know,
Yeah, I agree that I think it's silly to argue about the science of everything in Star Wars. However, I think what you have to do is look at what has happened in the movies, and you have to ask yourself: is that a fair logical leap that this would then happen? You know what I mean?
no, no, I
Like,
agree. Like,
For instance, Leia, flying out and then Mary Poppinsing her way back in. It, you know, is that something that is logical based on like what we've seen before? So
yeah, no, that was so awful because like I'm watching this movie the first time, and I'm not an OT purist or anything by any stretch. Prequels are my jam. That's where I got my bread and butter. And I talked with David Stewart, and it's like he's like, like yeah, sure, the OT is like really good storytelling, but the prequels will last a lot longer because there's so much more to discuss and peel. Like the Shrek ogre analogy. There's so much depth to those, and I totally
I totally agree.
yeah, I totally agree. There's a lot more depth. Like Star Wars original trilogy is very simple storytelling, generally speaking. Um,
Yeah, it's really well done and everything like that. But I agree. And like my kids, for instance, enjoy watching the prequels a lot more than the OT, a lot because of how they look and things like that too. And I think all that's fair. Although I think if you look at what it was done at its time, that the story that was told in the universe that that Lucas created is incredible. What he was able to do, and the prequels. That's the first one I saw in theaters was Fandom Menace. You
Yes.
know,
Oh my
so
god. Theater
so it,
story. Theater story, Ryan. When I was a kid, I was so goddamn excited for Phantom Menace. I saw Darth Maul, and I was instantly enamored. Now this is during the time of my mom before I found my stepdad. She was dating this other guy in a different town, Oklahoma, where I'm from. He had like a 13-year-old son. I got along with him. I was like 7 or 8. Phantom Menace was impending. The only movies they had in their house was Titanic
Oh
and
yes.
original trilogy. All right, and I'd see the original trilogy a lot. It's there's points in it, like I kind of like, oh, that's cool. You get the emotional pickup, but Star Wars never stuck, and I would say it's probably because at the time like Animorphs was a thing, like CGI based entertainment was becoming a thing when Star Wars was very much just like it's a very dull palette, color palette. I would say it's just brown, gray, white, black. Generally speaking, there's things that stick out like Dagobah, Hoth, whatever, but it's generally just it's a very bland color scheme. And
until
that,
you get to like Return of the Jedi, basically.
yeah,
Yeah,
indoor kind of sticks out, but it's still a lot of brown. It's purposeful. It's not to say that it wasn't purposeful. It's showing like a kind of a sterile regime taking over the galaxy. I totally get it. I appreciate it. But as a kid in the '90s, when CGI was really becoming a thing for catching kids' attention, Power Rangers, all this stuff. Star Wars is just bland as fuck to catch your attention unless you had parents to enculturate it to you. Then you see the
yeah,
prequels, and it's like Naboo yellow starfighter with bright white and blue R2 in the background of it, and Darth Maul with his bright red and black, and Qui Gon the blue and green, and you just like color everywhere. Amidala, like holy fuck, what is happening? You got silly Jar Jar. I go to the theater with this my mom's boyfriend and his son. We're excited. They're Star Wars fans. It's a new Star Wars. Having a great time. Uh, and I fall asleep before so I wake up afterwards, and I'm like, oh well, like how was the fight, like what happened, and they tell me, and I'm just like, like and I had to wait like eight or plus months to get the VHS release to finally see the actual fight of Maul and Obi-Wan. So that's
dude.
that's my Star
Oh,
Wars
what the
story.
hell?
That's my Star Wars story of the Phantom Menace.
I have a similar one, ironically, for Revenge of the Sith.
Oh my.
We were taking a school trip. I was in high school, and we are taking a school trip across the country to do some stupid thing. But we drove like 20 hours straight. And of course, we're all effing around in the school bus instead of sleeping, right? We're messing around. So we're all absolutely dead tired. And the first thing we do when we get there is we go to the premiere of Revenge of the Sith. And I'm so excited, but we have to wait like 3 hours in line. Like everybody, like there's tons of people in cosplay and stuff. It was crazy. And we get in there, these big ass comfy seats before the comfy seats were everywhere. And I fell asleep. I didn't wake up until Mace Windu and Palpatine were fighting.
Oh, that's not a
I was
bad spot
so
to wake up.
mad. I was so mad. As soon as I got home from the trip, I went and saw it again.
You
Yeah,
should have punched your friends for letting you sleep.
They told me that they tried to wake me up, but I was in a freaking coma, I guess.
dude, it was a crazy time for like it wasn't like I was doing anything crazy. I was like 12 when episode 3 came out, but it's like right around the perfect time for me. It's like I was pretty cool with my nerddom. As a fat kid, I got picked on some here and there in school, but it wasn't horrible. It wasn't like prototypical nerds where it's just like you're just getting pelted by the jocks. It was from a small country town. I was in the country school at the time before high school, so it wasn't horrible. My birthday when episode 3 came out, it's fucking Vader. I'm seeing like I love bad guys. I love the dark side, and it was just perfect, dude. I got toys. I got the Boga. I still have the Boga. I'm looking at it right now across the room. Um, I don't know, man. Like the prequel was such a great time for me as a kid, and I appreciate them. Like prequels and Spider-Man were my first introductions to like behind the scenes footage DVDs and stuff. Where it's like, oh, there's a second disc. Like, oh, you see what's on here, and and then you learn about like Hulk and Spider Man and fucking Star Wars and CGI stuff, and just like storytelling, and then you know, that's another problem. I just think with media now is like that's streaming. You look at Rogue One, where it's like you hear all this bad stuff behind the scenes of like corporate takeover with, oh, this isn't Star Wars. This is what we want for Disney with Rogue One, and it's like, what was the actual story? What was the original cut of this? Because I like it, but there, God, it could be way better, despite me liking it. I don't know, man. It's just like I'm really enjoying this, and it's because like, not just talking with you with Star Wars. I'm enjoying this because, for me, there's like a glimmer of hope. For 2 years, I've been sitting here with Last Jedi lingering over, like, fuck, they fucking killed Star Wars. I paid for Deadpool to not pay for Solo, to give it a chance, but not give fucking Lucasfilm money. And it's like I want to end my boycott of Disney completely. Like Endgame was my last purchase because it's like that's the end for me for Marvel. I think for a lot of people, some people fell for Spider Cuck, but I've always been on the Spider Cuck's going to go back to Sony, and I've been proven right. Uh,
Yeah, I'm kind of happy that's happening. I was surprised because I remember when we were talking when Spider-Man or Far From Home was on its run, everyone was saying $1 billion a threshold, and if it like makes $1 billion, then Disney can still like keep on making them. But if it doesn't, like all the rights fully revert back to Sony. I swear to God, people were talking about that. But then it makes over $1 billion, and then we have this kind of surprise fight, and we'll see. We'll see what happens.
yeah, I'll have to send you that link because it's funny. I've had a couple things with Marvel that I cover, that I craft videos and think about, and no one really sees it. And then the shit happens months later. Like Black Panther gets an Oscar, and it's like, oh, if I just made the Black Panther video a couple months later, oh, or like the Spider Man, it's like maybe I should re-upload it because I said this stuff months ago and no one really caught attention of it. And it's like, yeah, everything I said, even with Captain Marvel making $1 billion, even with Guardians 3 happening, Spider-Man goes back to Sony. I called it. Like,
Well, I think it's very. I was talking about this some the other day. I think it's very impressive what Marvel was able to do with all of their really god level characters not on their property. With Spider-Man gone, and with the X-Men gone, with Fantastic Four gone, they were able to build this thing from the ground up, and with characters that people, although they know of, they didn't love in the same way that people love Superman and Batman.
yeah, I would. Yeah, I've it's funny because man, like this is why I've always felt confident streaming because some of the stuff that comes up are just like delivery. Me and Rookie, when we started, we've been saying this stuff since we started, where it's like, you're thinking how crazy Marvel is, dude. They started with Iron Man. Like, who really gave a fuck about Iron Man besides like the actual hardcore fans?
I
Uh,
did. Thank you very much.
well, you're a hardcore fan, I assume. Generally speaking, the only people general public knows of Marvel, Spider-Man, of course. I'd say he's the quintessential comic character, transcends Batman and Superman. Even though they're all three orphans, like he goes across because he's a poor kid. You could make a story film rich, still kill Uncle Ben and shit, still give him direction, but he fits and he doesn't really need any like superpowers besides like the spire or whatever. Like he doesn't need a huge setup. He's very applicable across the world. I think anyone can relate compared to rich American Batman or American values Superman. But you got X Men, especially Wolverine. Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, although I think they've kind of played out. Maybe the Incredibles could be the example to how to actually adapt Incredibles for the modern or Fantastic Four for the modern day. But those three big properties, they have no chance at. They've sold them to Fox and Sony to stay afloat, and they start with Iron Man and like Captain America. Like, I guess Captain America has history with World War II, but really, who cares about Captain America? He's just a Herculean dude with a fucking discus shield.
Yeah.
Okay, like, and Thor. I don't know. I haven't read much Thor, but I remember seeing him one of his iterations in Infinity Gauntlet, and I'm like, yeah, I would. This would not draw me to read Thor. Like they've started. Guardians of the Galaxy is just bullshit from like the '80s, or it's like, oh, let's just try it.
Nobody cares
Ant
about.
Yeah,
Man,
Well,
yeah.
I
Honestly,
should.
nobody gives a shit about Guardians of the
Ant Man,
Galaxy.
Yeah.
and look at what they've done with just bullshit characters that they just kind of scrape the bottom of the barrel. Like, oh, let's see if we can adapt this and tie it in, and they've done it. So just think if they do it well with X Men, and they fucked up Spider Man.
They were able to create like such. I won't say anything for about the last quarter of it, but for the first at least half to three quarters of it, it was all the exception of maybe the Dark World. I know a lot of people didn't like that. For the most part, it was all good quality, inoffensive stuff that kind of everybody could get behind. And then you put this massive marketing machine of Disney. You pump this stuff out on ABC, you pump this out on ESPN. Like it's literally everywhere. It's infecting everyone. Everybody wants to be a part of it. It gets hype, and yeah, it's incredible what they're able to do. It's just sad to kind of see where it's headed, and the fact that they've built this all up the right way and off the backs of certain people, and now they're going. It seems like they're going to try to insert all of the identity stuff into it. So it's upsetting, and that's kind of why I was really done with it after Endgame.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me get your opinion about this. I remember it was like, from the get go, it was an argument, and I've always been on the side of it's not different necessarily. Like, technically, yeah, it's different, but it's not really. People feel there's some argument that Thanos Endgame is different than Thanos Infinity War. The only difference is, in my opinion, Infinity War Thanos actually went on the quest, but that was always his intent. He was just trying to figure out how to start. So he would bargain off some of these stones, but he would eventually get on the quest and do the Soul Stone. In-game Thanos appears different because he doesn't go on the quest, so he doesn't know the sacrifice. He hasn't had to sacrifice more because he's still in 2014 timeline, but he would have. Like, he's kind of he saw his timeline. He's destined to complete the mission unless someone figures out how to meddle with the timeline like they did.
I I understand where those people are coming from, because they're like, well, Thanos knew everything because he got it from Nebula. Yes, Thanos got a Cliff Notes version of what happened. And you have the scene at the end where, Scarlet Witch says, "You took everything from me." He's like, "Who the hell are you?"
Yeah, I
You know,
love it.
I
I wish he would have
don't
said.
even know
I
you.
wish he would have said, "Lady, I don't even know you." Like,
Yeah, but that is true. It doesn't. I can see how it wouldn't quite have the same weight, that a Thanos who like had gone through that, had sacrificed everything for it, and at the end he realizes that even though he did everything he could, it wasn't enough.
yeah, I don't know. Like, there's so much meta shit with Thanos. I would like to dig in deeper. Um,
Infinity War is so good, man.
oh my god,
God,
dude.
that's such a great
Yeah,
movie.
that was one of my first videos. Like, I think it was my first like edited video I ever did. I looked up an editor, figured out pretty quick like how to just throw a slideshow together essentially, and wrote my script and stuff. And I guess I got kind of bullshit clicks a little bit because my title was Philosophy of Thanos, so pretty quick I was like the second or third video on the list, and then I realized like, some people are complaining. Let me edit this title a little bit so I'm like, is he benevolent? Because I kind of took a full, a intro to religious philosophy kind of take where I'm like, because I'm an atheist, former Christian. I still defend Christendom a lot, uh, especially Catholicism, because it's like just I don't like lies. I don't like misconceptions. It's like, no, no, no. This is why they think this, and I know it. So I'm a fair atheist. I'm conservative still, with like
So,
social
so
issues.
you're atheist. So you're atheist and not like agnostic.
No, yeah. I would say I'm atheist. Like, I'm open to the idea of a higher being. But I would say anything is written. I would say Buddhism, from what I understand, is probably the closest to anything relevant, that makes sense, that doesn't really tie itself off from science and stuff. But even that, I would say, is just like it's really just glorified pacifism.
Yeah.
Um, but their core stuff with like energy and stuff, it fits science. So I'm like,
Yeah. So
okay, that
like,
makes sense.
yeah, agnosticism's kind of you don't think that there can be provable there's a God, but you're not like you don't have faith nor no faith, right? You can be like, yeah, there's probably a potential that something could be out there, but it's not some bearded guy, whose son died on the cross or whatever. You just kind of don't care, but you believe that there could be a higher being out there.
Yeah, I don't know if you know. It's not Brian Dawkins. That's
The
Eagles.
safety from the
Yeah,
Eagles. Yeah.
yeah. No, it's Richard Dawkins. Yeah, he made a scale of atheism, and he put himself at a 6 on his 7-point scale, because he's like, well, I'm open, but I don't think anything's there. But you never know. It's just mathematically you can't predict or quantify the possibility of this power, whatever it be. That's why I love George Lucas,
I
because
love Dawkins. He is an awesome, awesome author. That guy is amazing.
yeah,
You ever get a chance to read some Dawkins, do it.
I think oh, what is it?
Hitchens is another good one too. He
Yeah,
passed away.
yeah.
Hitchens
It's
is
funny
good.
about Hitchens. There's a Catholic bishop I watch here and there when I see him in my feed. He's very sporadic, but um, Bishop Barron, I think's his name. He's a Catholic bishop. He does movie reviews, and he usually ties philosophy to it. And he knows philosophy pretty well. He knows like Nietzsche, etc. Like he's not foreign to atheism philosophically. That's what I love, because most Christendom tries to just bash really hard the Bible, never looks at the other side and sees their points to argue. Um, and he talked about Hitchens, which he's like, I feel Hitchens was trying to find God from what he was talking about. He had this perception that God is this mythic, bearded guy, but what he was looking for was the idea of God. And he talked about how Hitchens, in his view, had a kind of Herod interest. Like Herod's like, oh, what is truth? Kind of like Pilate and stuff. And he said, Bishop Barron says, I have a kind of Herod interest in Hitchens, transversely. And I love that, And recently, with Rise of Skywalker, kind of tying this in with religion, yesterday, because I'm a plumber assistant. I'm starting school and stuff, so I'm like my third, fourth week of school, which is really just OSHA shit right now. So it's just standard across the board federal kind of understanding of safety. But
Bang it! You've heard of the hitch slap, right?
yeah, um,
Yeah.
but right
Just look
before
it up on YouTube. Hitch
yeah,
slap.
right before I went back in class after a break, I saw this video. There's this priest. I've hit him up on his channel. I'm waiting to see a reply. Maybe I'll find him on Twitter. Who knows? But he was just very enthusiastic about Rise of Skywalker trailer. And he's he had this kind of religious perception of Star Wars is always about like the good guys. In the end they win and this and that. And I'm like, I don't know. But it's just like it was so nice, and me being ex-Catholic, not being angry at Catholicism, but just kind of, I guess, being over it technically. It was so nice to see, because so many people, they either have that stigma of pedophiles versus priests, which I hate. The only reason I would never let my original priest from Oklahoma be around my kid is for his perception, which really makes me sad, because they're people. There's this one priest that like he loves going to Redskins games, and I'm an Eagles fan, but it's like I love that he loves football. They're people, and I see this guy who's just so happy about Star Wars, and he's wearing the cast, the little collars. I'm like, oh, he's a person, and he loves this fantasies. He's one of us nerds, and I looked at his list. He's got like videos of like making fucking Millennium Falcon Legos and shit. And it's just like, oh, I gotta get this guy on, and
I
talk Star Wars and religion.
I think that well, first of all, the whole pedo thing, it's less than if you look at the priesthood, it's actually less that do that than the normal population. So that is a blown up stigma.
Yeah.
But I think
Well,
that
it's because of
one
the
of
celibacy that they think it's like, oh, it's going to be a normal thing because they can't have sex, so they're going to want it more.
well, I think one of the things that blows it out is kind of this, you know, Catholicism, specifically the priesthood, is so much about being a perfect individual. Um, and do you know what I mean? Like priests are held to such this high standard, and I grew up
Yeah.
Protestant,
Yeah. No,
and
I'm not laughing at you. I just happen to look at the chat and I see uh, this and it say my dong can wipe out half the universe.
oh yeah, I saw that. But so I think that's part of why they're and whenever any pastor or anything does anything wrong, they're held at a higher standard because they're supposedly the ones that are supposed to be held at a higher standard, when in reality they're just people too.
Yeah, it's yeah. I used to be a lay reader and acolyte, so
Oh, you had the pretty white robes.
yeah, I had the black cassock and the white robe over it. Yeah, I
Easy access.
I carried the cross and
Yeah,
ate the
those
candle,
robes.
a lot
Yeah,
of stuff. Yeah.
you just lift them right up. Yeah.
Lift and
Originally,
enter.
originally when I was a kid and I, play guitar and stuff, I wanted to be kind of the next evolution of like Angus, with my ACDC fandom. Instead of being a schoolboy, I wanted to be the church boy, be like the devilish guy with like the altar boy look. That was my goal. When I was a kid, just take the cross, turn upside down. Not even like a devilish thing, like oh, I'm gonna be a devilish uh, band I make or anything. Just like have fun with it, and just it'd be the next progression from the schoolboy. It'd be fun, I actually just loved wearing the cassock and robe. It just felt natural to me.
Oh, I
One of my
bet.
favorite reads is Hitchens' God is Not Great, where he really elaborates on the fact that religion is pretty much the culprit for most of the wars in human history. Maybe not directly, but definitely indirectly. And I've always kind of felt like, religion, it really does offer a lot of bad to the good. I mean, I'm glad a lot of people, find, their faith and find their goodwill through it. But at the same time, you have, unfortunately, like the extreme, Islam religion where, they cut out so many things that you cannot do. And if you do, we got to kill you type of deal. And that's the kind of thinking that we need to get rid of in this world. So that book alone has really changed my ideology on religion and how I view it. So if you're ever interested in a good read, check that out. It's called "God Is Not Great" by Hitchens.
Yeah, I think that I think that as I feel like religion is kind of falling a little out of favor with the modern society. I think it's tougher to get people to coming back to church, but I think now that the new religion, if you will, is just ideology, and I think that we're going to come to those same paths, that it's these separate ideologies that are going to end up causing clashes in the future, whether it's a culture war or actual physical violence.
Yeah, I thought of that, when I was in like the philosophy kind of religion 101, like Western religion, I I it, I was already on the path to atheism because of some of the questions I was asking. That it's just like this doesn't make sense, you know. Stick with science, um, but it definitely gave me more, I would say, backbone to some of my arguments with like you would take. I was disappointed because it was Western religion. I wanted to do Easter. I wanted to learn something different from whatever, but didn't realize the perception I would get would be very valuable and kind of a stepping stone from like Religious by Bill Maher and things like that. And the Four Horsemen on YouTube. Um, One of those being like forgiveness. If you take like the idea of forgiveness, the various definitions or subtext of forgiveness, apply it to God in a sentence with like action. It's like whoa, that doesn't work with the theology. Things like that. And then like this one book that they made us buy was like 4 chapters, very small, But you try to read it and you're like, what the fuck am I reading? Then you do the course and you get to the end and you start reading like, oh my god, this dude is totally dissing this fucker, you know? It's like you get in this like philosophical rap battle essentially. And it was great, it's this whole argument of like, let's say God's Superman, and Superman is more like God's a chair, or this or that, getting like some weird comparisons, and it's like, dude, this dude's owning this guy, and he just doesn't get it. It was fun. Um, and I offer this to my philosophy teacher. I'm like, do you think media, do you think like theaters, like do you think that football or whatever, like this is becoming a religion of sorts, however minimal it might be? Do you think it's becoming a religion? And he's like, yeah, I think you're onto something. So it's like, it's cool. Like I come with that perspective when I'm in, Fandom, Menace, and Star Wars and stuff. It's like this is vital, in an intrinsic level, because even if you're, say, you're Christian or whatever, it's like, most of your time is spent with entertainment. It's just the culture, and entertainment's what's is the easiest way to spread propaganda and steer your directive and your mindset and stuff. So that's why the culture war matters, because it's way easier to steer someone's mind in a movie for 2 hours than a month in church every Wednesday, Sunday, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's we get so caught up now, those of us who are kind of aware to it, and we start looking at things, we're like, well, did they intentionally put that in there? Like, is this something that, now it's just like everything you're questioning why this is being put in your entertainment, why this is in the library at your children's school, things like that.
um. Okay, I want to serious, because this will get kind of back to a kind of meta and or religious kind of discussion. Um, Rise of Skywalker. Well, before we get into Rise of Skywalker, the trailer and the footage from D23, my Kylo video. What were your thoughts on that? Was there anything EU you were thinking of, or was there anything you're like, oh, maybe I never thought of this perspective with the sequel trilogy thus far, or in how it might reflect on Star Wars? Do you think I'm onto something? Because I am starting to like kind of brainstorm uh, not necessarily a follow up per se, but like a beefing up of the same kind of concept.
So it's interesting to talk. I think that Kylo is really, as much as I don't like him because I feel like he's a ripoff of character from the expanded universe, Jason Solo. I think that he is basically the only interesting person in this sequel trilogy.
Yes.
I don't know if it's intentional. Sometimes I think that we have this idea that J.J. Abrams is maybe he's just playing 40 underwater backgammon, right? And we're coming up with all these like possible theories, and maybe he's just confusing because J.J. Abrams' movie and Ryan's were so different. But yeah, you see, your thing was basically, does he want to destroy the Force as it is, right, and kind of start fresh from the beginning? And his behavior is confusing because he is this like irrational person in the first movie, but he feels like he's not dark enough, right? So he reluctantly kills his father, to try to. At first, we're like, oh, maybe he's infiltrating Snoke, but evidently that's not true at all. So that goes away. So you're like, why is he trying to prove himself to someone that he just then goes and kills the next movie? So what is his true motivation? And it did seem like he wanted Rey to start something with him. But then, 15 minutes later in the movie, he's back on this like warpath, and just like kind of like a child again, just, screaming at his troops to kill Luke and all that. So I don't know what's going on with Kylo. I don't think that I don't think that they had this planned out. That is honestly what I think. I know JJ's come out and said, "Oh yeah, the Last Jedi didn't affect my plan at all." I don't buy that for a second. He is bullshitting us.
Yeah,
Oh,
There's no way that those two movies were supposed to be like that.
yeah, bullshit.
okay, so this is why I'm thinking of doing a follow up and a kind of beefing up of that video because I feel there's kind of a more honing in. The more stuff we get, the closer we get, the more details we get. Um, I'll kind of tie this in with Game of Thrones. All right, so Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin has talked about fiction writers should be trying to say some grand truth in the end. All right, and I said this in my review, I think, of episode 6. I'm like, what the fuck was that? Knowing this thought from George R. R. Martin in a interview at a college, like at a big thing, it's like, is the end game of Game of Thrones determinism? Jon Snow is kind of destined to do this stuff, and that's it. It's not really like, oh, he's going to get rewarded for it. It's very kind of weird free will determinism kind of crossing type of storytelling. And if the end game is like Bran, it's like, well, I don't want it, but I'm the guy suited. It's kind of objectivism, like uh, Incredibles, but it's kind of determinism as well, in my opinion. And if that's the case, if George R. R. Martin is trying to say determinism is a truth, then it's like, well, how does that work with like black people in prison? For an example, it's like 50% of prisons are black people, who are 13% of the population. Um,
1350. Never heard that before.
yeah, it's a weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like if determinism is real, then like you can't really talk about social justice and problems of systematic oppression and this and that if you believe in determinism. It's like, well, clearly white people are determined to be the leaders of the free world and etc. It's like there's all these problems when you think of like race and kind of trends, at least in modern day, if you think that's true. And with Star Wars, I'm seeing a potential kind of like that, where it's like, all right, I've said from the beginning, people might come in here and think, well, you're a fucking Disney show. You're just trying to get on board with Disney now because it's like Famous is drying up or whatever. Like, no, no, no. Go back to my original content, my Civil War video from like beginning of my channel. I've said Last Jedi had some interesting things to try to steer Star Wars in a new direction. They didn't stick to it in the same movie, and they didn't develop it well. But I give them props for like they introduced some interesting things like Lucas made an Eastern philosophy kind of fetishized from the Western perspective story. There's people that have worked in China who tell me like, yeah, no one gives a fuck about Star Wars in the East because like that's already what they believe in. These kind of big ideas. So it's nothing new to them. It's just copycat. As opposed to America, it's like, wow, we're regardless if you think we're Christian or not, we're exposed. We're part of a Judeo-Christian society, so we got a very black, white, good and evil view, and we think good always wins because of the books that have formulated us, as opposed to the East is like, yeah, chaos is just part of life. It's what you do with it. It's kind of a Batman's Joker decision making philosophy. And so I look at Last Jedi, and I'm seeing little things where like, okay, Kylo is a progeny of the Skywalker line, and then he sees this mask. He's been trying to emulate Vader, and it's like, I'm thinking, is he trying to, when he says, "I'll finish what you started," does he not know about Vader killing Palpatine? Which
did
doesn't
did
make
no
sense.
did no one tell him in the entirety of his life, this very important story about the second most evil person in the in the universe being redeemed? Oh, it slipped our mind. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, like he was trained by Luke, so this should come up at some point. Along with Leia, who's not force trained, she just has inklings. Like she's supposed to be like a lesser Chirrut Imwe. She has little inklings, but it's like premonitions. Really, it. Someone should have told him like this has been leaked in the Disney canon. This has been leaked, and that's why the Resistance comes up after the Republic. So he should know this. All right. So if he knows it, then it becomes, is he trying to continue what Vader started? All right. What did Vader start? He raised the Jedi to one entity, his son. All right. And his son defeated Vader by tapping into the darkness. It wasn't until he looked at his hand he realized, like, oh god, I'm going to become my father. And then he threw away his lightsaber, said, "Fuck you, Emperor," and Vader finished it. But Luke kind of ends at a gray point. Everyone thinks it's the happy-go-lucky good stuff, but he ends at a kind of a gray point. But the narrative continues. Last Jedi, he made the Jedi Temple. He tried to start anew. All right, that's the good side. All right, he invested too heavily, so now he's in imbalance, and then he taps out, and Rey comes up. From what I understand, the light side of the Force kind of like, boom, we need someone to fill in the gap for Luke. So she's the balance to Snoke and Kylo. All right. If that's the case, then the end game of Star Wars is either continuing this back and forth light and dark, which is fine. I'm totally fine with the trope of light and dark, or it's the gray. All right, the Buddha, becoming a Buddha, finding the center of the universe, becoming one with the universe, is becoming gray in Star Wars. If that's the case, then there's nowhere to go forward, and it's like that's why they didn't do it in Last Jedi, because you're not going to go anywhere if you become gray. But if this is the end of the Skywalker saga, then becoming the Buddha, either Rey or Kylo, makes sense to me. So I really think in this line of thought, The Last Jedi could actually make some sense. Even with Ryan Johnson not understanding the Jedi in the prequels and stuff, and not understanding the saga in its entirety, The Last Jedi could make sense if JJ handles it well.
I think that, listen, there is definitely a chance that this movie could be a good movie, right? I think if you say that it can't, then maybe you just have kind of that outlook. Now, whether you feel like you can enjoy it or not, based on what these people, whether it be the media, the Lucasfilm employees, or random people on Twitter have called you or said you or treated you, I completely understand that. And that's kind of how I feel. I don't know what they could do to make me be like, oh, I'm in love with this movie and it's the saga's redeemed. But they definitely could make something out of it. I would say that if that's the route you wanted to go with this story, that shouldn't have been episodes 7, 8, and 9. It should be, Star Wars going gray, 50 Shades of Gray, or whatever you want to call it. Because it doesn't, like, to me, it's tough to make that connection to the Skywalker storyline. I'm still trying to figure out what Rise of Skywalker means. And, we had Kathleen Kennedy give the one off. Well, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a title, but it has to mean something. The idea of this whole going gray thing is not something that's uncommon, especially in, Star Wars lore. There's, in the expanded universe, there are a lot of, it's not just the Jedi and the Sith that are Force users. There's a lot of other different iterations of people who use the Force in different ways and sometimes tap into different aspects of it. And there are theories that, specifically one that, Jason Solo, who eventually becomes a Sith, kind of gets in his mind that there is no light or dark, right? If you're tapping in the light side, the dark side, it doesn't matter. All that matters is your intention, right? If you're using the dark side to, save an innocent child, then how is that a dark act, right? It's all about your intentions. And the whole light versus dark thing just becomes this, kind of like you said, this constant battle between, forces that isn't even really necessary. So I could see them going with that. And especially, like, I agree, the kind of the feeling that The Last Jedi had when they're like, oh, well, they're kind of trying to change things, like saying that, oh, anybody can use the Force and like that kind of thing. I can see how your idea is maybe they're trying to change that point of reference and how everything is seen. I don't know if that's what they're doing. I don't know if they know what they're doing. But
Yeah, well, clearly they didn't, at least before with
yeah,
Ryan Johnson. Like, regardless of whatever you think, I appreciate him trying to change Star Wars. Honestly, I do. I've said this for me. It's like I appreciate trying to break the tropes and go forward somewhere, not just with Skywalker, but just with what we understand. Like, do something new. That's great. But clearly, and I'm on the side that it feels this way. Clearly, you can't break the mold. Clearly, you got to stick to the tropes of good and evil. And it's like it's sold for 40 years. You don't need to change it. People keep wanting to buy it because it's it's all based
it's
on the
sold for
hero's
longer
journey.
than that, right? It's yeah, exactly. It's sold for as long as they've been telling stories about good
People,
people versus bad
oh
people.
my god. Okay, this will tie in. All right, so Avatar. People cry about Avatar. A lot of people in Fandom Menace cry like, oh, it's just Pocahontas just dances with wolves. It's just, it's plagiarism. Boo, boodly hoodly. And I'm like, dude, you realize fucking George Lucas got a mythology teacher to help him write the biggest plagiarism story of all time that resonates with everyone because everyone has had a story like this. And it's not me dissing George Lucas. It's brilliant that he's made an all-world, all-universe story that Muslim, Christian, Jew, Hindu, atheist, etc. can jump into. I'm an atheist. I think the Force is a cool idea for some meta thing or whatever. Christian can find it as a partial kind of reference to their faith, and all around, you can find some value religiously to reference from this series along with so much history, mythology, etc., other things, technology, like R2D2 and C3PO. There's an interaction in Episode 4 that I picked up on an accident where he's like, "It's our plight in life to suffer," and I'm like, "What the fuck? Like, what does a robot know about suffering? Like like was that accidental or was that purposeful writing? Like that is so crazy to think of a fucking android thinking about suffering. There's so much richness to Star Wars. Um, but like I'm just like this is why Star Wars is so great because it's like you can look at it as a popcorn film, or you can see it completely as like something totally in depth that like a entity or whatever gave Lucas this kind of light, and it clearly was his intent. He said people misquote this 12-year-old tweet where he's like, "Oh, I made this for 12-year-olds." Like, no, he made it for 12-year-olds to have a mythology, a contemporary mythology to kind of steer morality in a day that no one's really buying into any of the old world stuff. So like there's so much value, and that's the value of film is that it can do in 2 hours what it might take years and years of like Catholic school or whatever school you're in religiously to become aware of, to click. It's
You
just
know, it's for people that say, "Oh, it's just a movie, bro." What are you worried about, and things like that. It's not it's not just a movie. Although on one hand it is, right, and you can go see another one, but it's the way that it's the way that stories are told now. Instead of scratching writings on a cave, instead of making up these grand stories about heroes and demigods as as ways to teach people how the right and wrong things, and parables. That's what this now is for us. So it's not just a movie, right? It's how we experience those things now.
yeah, like uh, I'm sure there's plenty of people that used Luke Skywalker for a gauge of like how long should I stick with this friend? It's like, well, Luke Skywalker stuck with his dad till he fucking died and turned to the light. So yeah, it's just a movie. It's just it's fiction, but it's like it says something
But
spiritually.
then how long should I stick with my nephew? Not long.
Oh my god. Okay. So that's another video I've been sitting on. I've had a script at least halfway written for since like February. All right. I with okay. So you just hit on something that's like, ooh, man, I need to finish this. Um, I'm stuck with the Last Jedi and Luke. All right, trying to make sense of it. All right, because like they're not going to just completely retcon it. They're not going to throw it completely away, no matter what little retcons subtly they do. Um, and I've kind of realized SJWs, the general term we use, love the Last Jedi because, for one, kind of like how Halloween, the new Halloween did, as a sequel, it kind of abdicates any guilt on the actual perpetrator, just like gun victims or gun, murderers, like mass shootings. Well, they didn't have a father, this and that, blah blah blah, their situation. It's not really their fault. It's society. People made fun of them or whatever, you know. And
Yeah,
Kylo,
it's impossible. People have to justify it. They can't just imagine that some dude's a piece of shit. Yeah.
yeah, Kylo is set up where it's like he's a victim of circumstance. He's from a shitty family where his parents broke up and his father abandoned him. And his tutor, his other male figure, thought about killing him, which I'm actually fine with. I'm actually fine with Luke contemplating murder, okay? Because his father is Darth Vader. He loves his father. He saved him. Luckily, Lucas wrote a story where you never actually have to think about the consequence of it because Vader dies. If Vader lived, then Luke is stuck in the middle of like, I saved my father, but he's been part of a 20-year genocidal regime that's like, obliterated planets. And I have to answer that. I have to pick a lane. Do I save my father? Or do I stick with the Republic and put him on war criminal charges or whatever? They killed him, so you don't have to worry about it. It's nice and neat. Bow's tied. With Kylo, he sees that in Kylo, and he has the kind of hero's dilemma of like Batman versus a hero that's willing to kill people, where it's like, if I killed him, then there'd be a lot less death in the world. But conversely, I would have just ended him without any chance to decide himself to not do the evil for me to react to. It's like that hero's dilemma, and I'm actually fine with that. I thought that was cool, or it could be cool. But it doesn't work for Star Wars, or at least the way they did it doesn't work. It's not developed enough where it's like, oh, Luke kind of, picked a lane. He saw Vader. He could only react at the end, but he sees Kylo becoming this, and he's like, well, I can just end this and save everyone's suffering. It's like, that's a cool thought, actually. Um, you know, People on our side don't actually think enough about the Last Jedi. They just think about the actual story problems like Leia, Holdo, Rose Tico, Finn, Poe. Very obvious things. They don't think about the deepness where it's like there was things here that can be argued. I try to be fair. That's my whole thing with my channel. Is like I try to be fair and see like I just don't try to be a hate train. And I can give props or at least credit where like they tried or they offered something. And the thing is though, Luke thought about it. All right. So just like Don Imus, no matter what charity Don Imus has done for all the people of color, he said nappy-headed hoes. So he is forever a guilty party. So that's the other half of this Kylo thing, is that Luke chose to try to kill this bad guy. He had a moment of weakness to save the galaxy. No matter what great he did, no matter that he helped end the Empire, he thought about killing his innocent nephew. And so he's forever a guilty party. And so that's the SJW factor of Star Wars Last Jedi, um, that could have ramifications going forward. Is that like, oh god, you've opened the floodgates. You've not only just made a character that you can't really blame it. Society's fault he's that way, but also this hero thought about it. He committed thought crime, so he's forever guilty.
Yeah, that's an interesting frame. I would say that it is totally believable, right? That Luke Skywalker could fail, right? That we've seen that happen over and over again in Star Wars. So the idea that Luke Skywalker would make a mistake, a lapse in judgment, is totally believable. I think the disconnect you have is where, he makes this mistake and then disappears from the galaxy for how many years, and doesn't try to fix it or something. I think that's like the bigger criticism. Um, when you look at what happened, although it is easy to be like, over a dream, Luke Skywalker stood over his nephew in contemplation of his, his murder instead of trying to redeem him like he did his father. It's interesting you bring up like the kind of battle because there's a in the expanded universe. I know I keep coming back to that. That's kind of my
Oh no,
shtick.
that's why you're here.
Uh,
Like I'm getting, I'm getting a hard on about the EU. I'm like, where do I start? Like, what book do I just start with? Splinter of the Mind's Eye, or do I pick Dark Empire? Like, where do I start? Because I know Dark Empire actually starts with the Thrawn trilogy, and well, really quick, just about the EU. Jeff Fix always talks about Shadow of the Empire. So I read it from the library. I read about 2/3 of it, and I'm like, this is pretty lame. This is just trying to this just feels like it's written off like remember this thing in the movies, you know.
yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that
And
one.
so I read 2/3. I'm like fuck this. Read the end of it and I'm like oh god, it's just leads into Last Jedi or Return of the Jedi. You know how that goes. It's just like this did nothing. It's just like a remember.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely good and bad, and everyone has their tastes. Um, but if quick aside, if I were you, I'd start with the Thrawn trilogy. If you haven't read it before, but like I said in Dark Empire, Luke falls to the dark side briefly. Uh, he is a person who can make mistakes, and the idea that that could happen is not ridiculous. It's interesting that you say that people see Kylo as this person like with no fault, that he's just being manipulated into everything, and maybe that is true. And that's not how I see him. I see him as you know uh, just kind of a moody teenager.
Yeah,
And maybe
well,
that is the difference between SJW and us.
the SJWness is that they want to remove like despite like current like real politics, like mass shooters. They want to they want to blame guns, and at the same time they say, well, there's no agency because he's a victim of society, and you see hints of that at the least in the Halloween sequel remake. Um, and it's interesting, but it's like well, clearly, regardless of how much society pushes you. So I talk about Batman Joker kind of reflecting Star Wars as far as choice off of trauma or an event is like no matter how much society pushes you, it's like Hitch where it's like you go in for the kiss, you go 90%. It's like 10% is the woman. And it's the same way. It's like no matter how much society pushes you, there's that 10% that's you that it decides I'm going to go this way. And I feel like Kylo is engaging. He's the only interesting character. He's got a dynamic. Um, because he's in flux and stuff. He's got this lineage, and that's why I think determinism is a thing in this movie in this Rise of Skywalker. Because like it's easy to say like, oh, well, Ryan just made this like, ha, gotcha, raise nobody, and it's like, uh, okay, like I'm thinking just rationally, like, what if he's doing this determinism thing? What if he's doing this like elitist kind of filmmaker, college, schoolboy mentality of like, I'm gonna, I'm above you. What if that was his actual angle? It's like, well, determinism, it's like, Star Wars has been all about determinism. Skywalker saga is justified, like the chosen one birthed Luke Skywalker, who actually, like it's always been a question to me. Maybe it's answered somewhere, but to me, I was always like, is Anakin actually the chosen one, or
Who
was it
is it?
Luke?
Yeah, yeah,
Was it
yeah.
Luke? Because Luke actually kind of rounded it out, but Vader started it by raising the Jedi to find this perfect candidate in Luke later on. So that's why I'm like, is Kylo actually going to just like clean slate everything and gray everything?
Oh, maybe Kylo's the chosen one.
They always said prophecy misread. It may have been, like I don't want to give any credit to the sequel trilogy, but if they do it, I'm cool with it. And I,
They're all valid questions to ask, right? And what if Ryan Johnson's not just an incompetent buffoon, right? What if there was something to what he was doing? Um, yeah. When you say like maybe Kylo's not responsible and stuff. It makes me think of Anakin too, and like the situation he was put in. Raised as a slave with no father, who went to the Jedi when he probably shouldn't have. Has to leave his mother as a slave, like kind of what he struggled with growing up, and can you really blame him for what he was trying to do? And it's interesting to think about.
yeah, like it's not to a degree. I would say at the least, it's not completely Anakin's fault. It's part of the Jedi's fault for letting him in the first place. Because I assume maybe it was a power hungry move, where it's like they saw his midichlorian count and they're just like, "Well, this is the super cell we need to defeat the Sith forever. Let's get him." And they didn't realize like, oh, he's gonna raise the Jedi. And that's the other thing too is like I hate these comments when I get them, where it's like, this doesn't make any sense. Palpatine being back, Luke destroyed the Sith, blah blah blah. It's like, we realize Lucas had more story planned. He talked with Luke Skywalker and Carrie and everyone. Like, hey, I want to get y'all back like 30 years to do the sequel trilogy. Like,
So yeah, it's very hard. So much like how we take J.K. Rowling as gospel, right? Whatever she says, people do the same kind of thing with George. And over the years, he's gave a million different answers to a million different questions. Um, he's there. I've been able to find interviews that he did with Stephen Colbert at a fan thing where he specifically says that the sequel trilogy was supposed to be about the kids, or Anakin's grandkids. And he literally says, just like the books, I mean, just like the expanded universe. But then you can find other quotes where he says that's not necessarily the plan. So sometimes it just kind of depends on how he's feeling at the time. And then unfortunately, that is the trap we all fall into when you have this one person who is essentially the creator and can determine whatever happens and isn't necessarily consistent about what they say.
yeah, I feel.
But I will say this: we've been talking about Dark Empire a lot, mostly because of the Palpatine thing. But the original plan that they pitched to him for that, but the way the expanded universe worked was, if people wanted to write a Star Wars story, especially in the initial days of it, in the early days before they really made a focus on continuity, like in the late '90s, in the early days, so early 2000s, people would say, I want to do this. This is kind of my plans. They'd pass it up to George, and George would say, I don't want this. I don't want this. This is fine. Why don't you make that? Right? That's kind of how it happened. He would have a broad overview on what was going on. Dark Empire was originally supposed to be like it was going to be like a fake Vader, basically. And he said, no, I think it makes more sense for it to be Palpatine. He's the one who chose for Palpatine to be the one to come back. So he made that decision. Now, was he? How much has he been involved in talks with J.J. Abrams? They're like, oh yeah, they talked, but I mean, who knows what's going on at Lucasfilm?
Yeah, there's definitely a narrative. I would say, like, regardless if it's good or not, there's definitely a narrative on the Phantom Menace side with content and discussion about Star Wars or whatever topic. I'm trying to think what was the Kit Harrington. All right, he came out during the series, revealing that season 8. He's like, something came out where he's like disappointed about season 8, and people were just jumping on it. Like, whoa, even Kit Harrington's disappointed about season 8. Blah blah. It's like, well, you realize, regardless of him being part of the series that's been game changing for this fantasy tropes and stuff and storytelling tropes, at the end of the day, he's probably thinking, all right, my character's one of the bigs. He's going to have a big part in, you know, and a heroic part in winning the day for the good guys. All right, so for the good guy to eventually, essentially shit all over his uncle slash father's legacy that has guided him for this whole time for 8 years, um, to win the day for everyone and not get any credit and get cast aside to the north, to the beyond the wall. Um, yeah, story wise, that might piss off the actor who's portraying it because he's still part of normal storytelling, generally speaking. Doesn't mean he like has some vendetta against Benioff and Weiss, you know. So it's like, I see spin shit like that, and I'm just like, I'll see one video, I'm like, I see what they're talking about. No, I'm done. It's not worth my
Yeah,
time.
to me with Game of Thrones, and yeah, so could be could be three things. Could be what you said. Could be that he didn't like the fact that he only had two lines. She's my queen, and I don't want it. Um, or or it could be that for him, uh, knowing this character as he probably feels like he does, he may have been just as frustrated as all of us were that Jon Snow, the guy who is literally done, who has done the right thing regardless of how hard it is, essentially the entire story, just watches all these things happen and kind of is a bystander, all because he got it in his sister, and that just drove his mind crazy. That was just it. He just let her do whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the other thing with determinism. It's like Bran doesn't want it, but he has the power. He's kind of objectivist too, because like the people that have the power should do the things with power, and there's this whole Randian kind of argument with the Incredibles. If you watch Wisecrack and stuff, which that's the thing. Like it's funny. It's funny. Me and Rookie Critic and other people I'm close to, we talk about it's like he's trying to make content that lasts, and I never know when it'll happen. Out of nowhere, I just got a comment on my ACDC Fly in the Wall album review, which is from 1985. It's the first album review I did. I've never done a follow up album review for my favorite band, basis on my channel, name at least and stuff. And this is the thing is like, it's great to have content that isn't just today. And like we were talking about earlier, it's like the Phantom Menace. I feel like there's certain arguments we've had, like Last Jedi is quintessential to all of it, because regardless if we're talking about Star Wars or Marvel, uh, or other properties, we're all rooted, generally speaking, in the Last Jedi and Star Wars and what happened. And it wasn't just a bad movie from a ambitious director that fucked it all up. It was a bad movie from an ambitious director who was, you know, wants to piss on fans for believing in tropes that have been established for 40 years in and out of the main continuity with like film and stuff. But
Yeah,
I feel we've gotten to a point where all we're doing is commenting. We're just with the newsreel of like, I'm because we started a kind of subgroup when my group started. My specific buddies like Rookie Critic, Jeff Wolf's Kryptonian, and Flipped Out. We started and we're like, High Council has a blueprint, but they're missing certain things. So we should be the next step to fill those gaps, and be the next thing, the next level, fulfill what they're missing. And it's like generally it's like we're all rooting Star Wars and we all want Star Wars to be better. And it's like like you said, Disney can't just the biggest corporation in entertainment can't just kind of admit they fucked up, but they can make course corrections and stuff, and kind of fulfill the questions we wanted we have answered, like race, parentage, etc. And it's like all people can talk about is like, oh, her lightsaber folds, retards. It's like, what? Like, what do you want? It's like, I I feel like my hands are tied. Where it's like, what are we supposed to want from Star Wars now? Like, is it better if it just is dead and no one touches it, no one tries to make new shit from it? Like, I'd rather people try. Like, I'd rather have less Jedi's than nothing. You know, I want people to try to steer this in some way, even if it fails. I'll critique them to hell, but it's like, hey, you're onto something. Like I've always gave Last Jedi credit for offering ideas that they didn't stick to. You know,
Yeah. So there's been plenty of bad movies in the history of cinema. None that really caused the kind of upswell movement that I feel like has been created here. And it has to do with two things. One, it's an extremely beloved property, but two, when you said I don't like this, you got called something, you got insulted. You have a man in Ryan Johnson who made a movie that made 1.3 billion dollars and is out insulting people on Twitter. It's the culture that's kind of seems like it has developed at Lucasfilm right now. Um, so on one hand, yeah, I think that everybody involved in this community does want better Star Wars, but at the same time, even if it does get better, if it's those same people and they're treating you that way, it's tough to support that. Um, so, and I do not think it's realistic for Disney to get on its knees and cup you and say we're sorry, uh, because they're one of the biggest media conglomerates in the world. I just don't see that happening. But a good start would be to stop that behavior and change that culture. Just a couple days ago, Ryan Johnson's out on Twitter. Um, I don't understand why that's necessary for someone like that. Um, yeah, with one of the reasons I talk about it a little bit, and basically the first video I did for my channel, and kind of what drew me to the Fandom Menace. When Star Wars or when Lucasfilm decided to decanonize and get rid of the expanded universe, a lot of people were upset. A lot of people were upset because it's something that they loved and they'd invested a lot of time and money in over the years, and they felt like that was a direction that had been accepted for the characters. They didn't quite understand why. So then when they started criticizing the new books that came out, like Aftermath by Chuck Wendig, and they, writing things like wibbly wobbly and herkly jerkily to describe the motion of a TIE fighter, um, when you criticize that, you got called homophobic, sexist, racist, because you didn't like this female character, you didn't like this gay character that was in the book. So that, like, I saw that happen. You would have one member, you had one member of this Facebook group that was in support of the expanded universe that was like, we should have a jihad on Disney Star Wars, as far as like a boycott, and like we should try to spoil it. One dude and thousands and thousands of members does that, and the media starts writing hit pieces about it and trying to create this false narrative around the community. So when
meme
we
jihad. That's what you need. You need meme
yeah.
jihad.
so it's also similar in what's going on at Lucasfilm. So I think it's, if you're someone who doesn't want to give your money to them until you see some change in the culture, I think you're well within your rights, and I understand that.
Yeah, okay, so getting to one of the questions I kind of highlighted in our chat. How do you feel? All right. So one of the things I never got. So of course B Level's made himself famous, infamous, if you will, from crying out Jeremy with his little council of exile, whatever, in exile. Dark Shinobi and the Iron Inquisitor. They used that clip of Jeremy saying "I love Last Jedi," which is out of context, etc. And that's where they got famous. And then they did that
Which was
video.
posted as a joke. Yeah.
Yeah, and they did that video, and then he took it down, and they did, uh, High Council had the live stream on a Monday, and then they responded with their own review of the High Council stream, and they keep using this. Jeff Fix says, "Is this a joke?" And they use this for like a crying call of like, "The Phantom Menace thinks the EU is a joke." And it's like, no, they thought your video was a joke that you kept crying about the Phantom Menace. Like, the whole point is like, we don't care if they make EU shit. because they got rid of it to start with, um, appeasing the EU fandom out of nowhere when you have like core problems with your management doesn't mean anything. That's why the EU argument doesn't matter for like the Phantom Menace point. And it's just funny, this comes up. And I'm just wondering, your opinion. Would you be fine in the current state of Lucasfilm? This is kind of like reflecting on the B level and those weirdos. Would you be fine if the EU was continued by the writers and story group currently at Lucasfilm?
Um, that's a tough question. First, as far as those other guys, we've obviously had our differences and stuff. I think um, they're a very good example of two people kind of experiencing something in a completely different way. Um, and that's how they see it. I think that for them, um, they're so focused on the Fandom Menace, and I think recently past couple days they've been making more stuff that's focused on the expanded universe, and I think that's awesome, and I think that's what they should be focused on because that's what they love. So that is good for me. That's kind of content that I would like to see. But as far as the EU being or Legends, as it's known now, being continued from the current Lucasfilm, I don't think that's a good idea because I don't like what I'm getting out of the rest of from the movie base and the other books. What I think would be the best possible scenario would be for so recently we had a Marvel book, well, a Marvel comic that was released called Marvel 108, Star Wars 108. That's actually a Legends book or comic. It released about 4 months ago. It had the Legends title. It continued a story that was from the Marvel comics, but back when Marvel was doing Star Wars comics. From my understanding, essentially what happened is Marvel came to Lucasfilm and said, "Hey, we have this idea. Can we use your characters?" Because they have the rights to those expanded universe characters and the storylines. And Lucasfilm said, "Yeah, that's sure. You can do it." And so they did it. What I think, if they get enough people that are still interested in that continuity, especially after they're done with this sequel trilogy, if if all these years later people are still asking for that same thing and they're showing that they're buying it when it does come out, then I think it could leave it open for a company like Del Rey, who is the one that does the books, to get a group together of all the authors, because a lot of the authors were a lot of the brains behind these stories. It wasn't just the Lucasfilm story group. Lucasfilm had some people that were responsible for keeping continuity together, but the authors were a lot of times the ones that kind of came up with the ideas and then pitched it. You could have a lot of the authors that are very familiar with this stuff and have shown that they are willing and open to writing more if they get the opportunity. I think if you get a group of them together at Del Rey or any book company, I think that is the best path forward for Legends content, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree to some degree. Uh, like I made a video where it's like someone shared something and I'm like, I think it was about in regards to Solo, and I'm like, oh yeah, it was when Solo 2 was like a trend, and I'm like, no,
I mean, an
like,
artificially like created hashtag or something.
yeah, and
Mm.
don't get me wrong, there were certain things about Solo the movie I was like, oh, like Alden, excuse me, Alden Ehrenreich, I was fine with him overall. It's like it was gonna be Harrison Ford. I'm not an original trilogy fan, but I see the charismaticism of Harrison Ford. He definitely stands out. He's the star character of the original trilogy, despite Luke having the biggest effect
I mean, he
in
arguably is two of the most well-respected, fictional characters in, the last, half century between Han Solo and Indiana Jones.
Yeah, no, yeah, like I've recently come into the Indiana Jones series. I watched all four movies. I'm like, I don't mind episode 4 or season episode 4, for lack of a better term. I
Kingdom
watched
of Crystal Skull.
Yeah, I watched Red Letter Media's review of it, and I'm like, I generally agree with them. You know, it's like it wasn't completely bad like people cry about, but it's like when you introduce aliens, it's like where do you go from there? Like, there's no need for a 5, unless it's a prequel, which is just like, God, come on, you know, you're just gonna add more crap, you know. Uh, but
I think the biggest problems with it is there's some real cringe parts with Shia LaBeouf, and the ending is a really like downer when you realize it's just like aliens. You're like, what? This doesn't make any sense. Like I think those are the biggest problems with the movie, and it leaves kind of lasting impact. But I agree with you that a lot of that movie is enjoyable.
yeah, like the contrast of him and his son until he realizes it's his son, and he's like, "Whoa, I need to step in with this kid." You know, it's like, I like that. You know, it's like he's kind of
And
getting his own
you're
medicine.
going to college. Yeah.
Yeah, he's getting his own medicine. You know, I like that. You know, and Red Letter Media, I think, did a very precise. Yeah, I'm not someone who just agrees with any reviewers. You know, like it's rare that I'm just like totally down with a reviewer. In every facet, but like Red Letter Media really hit it on the head to me with their review of their Plinkett review of Indiana Jones 4. It was like, well, he didn't need it, but like he did some cool stuff, but he missed some stuff, and I'm kind of in the middle. Like, you know, like I don't think Shia LaBeouf was so awful. It was just, you know, people are gonna remember him more for the swinging in the trees than they will like the interaction in the bar. And I'm not an
Yeah,
indie.
I was just gonna say that like greaser bar scene was awesome.
Yeah, like they really set the tone for their contrast, and then like you throw the wrench of that's his son, and it's like, oh, he's totally opposite. You know, it's like that's cool. You know, and he's an older man. You know, like the groundhogs were the biggest thing to me because I noticed shit like Darth Jar Jar. Very compelling argument because they use the CGI as part of the argument. Where it's like CGI is deliberate. You know, like you don't just accidentally make CGI talk. You know, that's deliberate action. So when Jar Jar waves his hand like a Jedi mind trick and talks the same line as Padme, looks coerced, you know, and then you just abandon it. All right, and the same thing happens with the to a lesser extent the prairie dogs. The groundhogs. I'm like, what is the importance of these prairie dogs going to be? Are they going to be like super aliens in the end, or like what is this? And it's like, oh, it's just they're just prairie dogs. They just happen to be there. Like, why did you waste all that money CGIing them? Like, what? You could just film dirt, you know? Like, that's my frustration as a new indie fan. Like, just only seen it like the last 6 months. You know, as the whole series. Um, you know, okay, so I'm trying to steer you a little bit. You say you're a Comicsgate fan for a very long time, so um, does War Campaign tie into that? And if so, how long, or you know, are you pro or anti War Campaign?
Um, so I'm neither like pro or anti war campaign. I think that just like with Comicsgate, right? Everyone that uses the CG, um, I'm gonna support you until I learn more about you, right? You're always gonna have disagreements with people. Uh, War Campaign was an excellent, it is an excellent tool for Comicsgate because they support Comicsgate. If you say I'm CG, they've got your back, and it was really easy while we had so many other enemies for War Campaign to go out there and get. I think once everything slowed down and we started getting blocked by the Renfamous and people like that, then we still have, you know, all these hilarious guys who are still trying to make memes. Um, and then, you know, you meme the wrong person and they get a little butthurt about it. And I think that's how any movement that grows as big as it has, you're gonna have people in it that don't all like each other. Um, and that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. To to blame, I don't want to say blame War Campaign, but you know, to blame War Campaign for uh, you know, people getting overly triggered. I don't think it makes any sense. At the same token, I do think that, you know, there were some steps that in my mind, I'm not going to tell anybody how to act, but where war campaign went a little far, uh, just because. So like specifically when when Jeremy was going to have like Doug TenNapel on, right? And I have issues with how Doug handled everything, and it really irritates me. And I from that first time that him and Mike Miller had that issue, it kind of set my set the hairs in the back of my neck up. Like this guy is starting to blame everyone for the refunds, and I don't really want to get into all of that. But I think that a lot of people aren't in on the CG drama and don't really care about it too much. We had a lot of members. I don't know if they're members of War Campaign or not on Twitter, just going after people for talking to somebody, uh, like to a relentless extent. I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but I'm not going to tell anybody how to talk. That's not my thing. I don't like it when people tell me how to talk, and I don't. I try not to tell other people how to talk. I think that if War Campaign only wants to buy from people that are like I'm diehard CG, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Bottom line, um, you know, I can see the people who, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know of any people, but I can see how this Comicsgate thing has become so big and become such a moneymaker for people that we have to be wary of people coming into CG to abuse it. Um, so I think War Campaign acted as good watchdogs for that. But I don't
Yeah,
know. Is that an explanation? I've been talking for like 5 minutes. I don't even really know what I'm saying.
no, no, you're fine. I think you had hit a good take. I'm part of War Campaign to some degree. I'm not like a super memer, but I definitely am a assistant memer. While I'm learning Photoshop on my phone, I'll be like, hey, you should do this with this. Here's the reference for this, meme. Uh, um, no, I love it. I love the culture of War Campaign. It's very supportive.
You guys have a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, we have fun. We're here to show the absurdity. We don't take ourselves too seriously. Um, like War Campaign should be at 5 to 10K if it was like a channel that took itself seriously. But you're just it's like they're at 1.6, but it's 1.6 thousand fans that are very supportive and dedicated to the cause and to the comedy. It's not for, as Ro would say, the pussy wussies. And I adapt that kind of a philosophy. It's like, I'll be respectful to you to a degree. Um, my perspective is trying to bring the Phantom, bring War Campaign attitude to the Phantom Menace. It's like, I think we've let too many people in. I think we've got too soft, got too big a range, not really focused. And the other problem with the Phantom Menace is we don't have a focus like Comicsgate, where it's like, the companies we're arguing with won't give us this, so we'll do it ourselves. We don't need them. Film is, I get, different, but you don't need so much money like the actual industry to make competent content. Now, it won't look great, but it can be smart. Wicked Critic did it for $500 on this last trilogy, and he did it for less for the previous ones he's done. So, it's like
Well, I think to a point, I was talking earlier with somebody about this. Actually, I think Snowdub said it on maybe Rookie's stream, and I then talked to somebody after I heard him, but he talked about how we're not happy, we're not entertained with a lot of the stuff we're getting anymore, so we're kind of making our own content. And I think that's very true. I feel like I hardly have any time to like watch TV or whatever anymore when it's not sports. I feel like I'm always watching YouTube because even if it's not, someone talking about, you know, Lucasfilm's treatment of the fans and Star Wars, right? Now we've have this community that's grown. There's so much that we're trying to watch all the time. That's really like our form of entertainment.
yeah, no, I agree. For me, I don't think there's, I don't know how to address it. It's like I definitely think there's grifters, high and low, in the Phantom Menace that are trying to use a certain format to grow, and it's not quite working for them. So they'll cry about it, and eventually they'll be seen or they'll be found out. It's not to say they're not nerds about a topic, but it's like they're trying to grift into shit that's not their own, that they don't care about really, and it becomes obvious, and eventually they'll die out as a channel, and I'm fine with that. I encourage that. Ultimately, my drive personally as a channel is to. I'm not wisecrack. I'll never be that smart. I'll never have that big of a revenue to make videos, but I want to be something like wisecrack for the Phantom Menace. Something that hey, you can go back 5 months later and see my shit and think about the state of fandom, think about where film's going, or find something new. Biggest thing I notice I look at my feed is like everyone's talking about the same thing all day, every day, and no one's like, everyone says they love film, but no one's actually exploring film. No one's exploring anything beyond today that might get them a click. No one's exploring Criterion Collection of critically successful films. No one's trying to push. This film is actually a hidden gem, or Chris Stuckman hilariosity. And that's what I miss. When I first started getting into YouTube, it was just a couple reviewers like Jimmy Johns and Chris Stuckman, where it's like maybe I want to do like their style, and learn more about subtext so I can give you more about film. And a video I'm thinking about making, I've hinted at a couple times in streams, especially with Rookie Critic, is I think Lucas not only was fed up with the prequel hate, but I think he really, maybe being a smart man, saw the writing on the wall that if you don't have something like Avengers to build up on really quick and digestible, if you're trying to be experimental, you're dead. If you don't have something cookie cutter to build up, you're not going to go anywhere. And so he quit. He just gave up, got $4 billion is put to charity off the bat, and let Lucasfilm suffer. And he's like, well, I kind of started the blockbuster trilogy saga with the Phantom Menace, and I realized it doesn't sustain well with Revenge of the Sith and then the Hobbit trilogy. So I'm just gonna end it and get a cash out while I can, because people just want easily digestible stuff, and I'm an experimental filmmaker. I want to push the boundaries. People aren't willing to have that, so you know. Uh,
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It does seem kind of like everyone's talking about the same thing, and but it's interesting. I when the Spider-Man news broke, I made a video relatively quickly just because that's something I'm interested in, MCU and things like that, and I made like a 6-minute video about that, and it got like 160 views. And then I uploaded an hour and 40-minute video talking with another expanded universe person, and it's something that I was just extremely passionate about. I didn't think very many people would watch it because it's so long, and it's got like 400 something views, and I got tons of watch time off of it, and I was pretty amazed. So I do think it's important to talk about things you're passionate about, and I think there's room for that. One thing I want to do with my channel is I think that there's a lot of people, obviously in the Phantom Menace, everybody loves Star Wars, right? That's what all brought us here originally. And it's obviously branched off to different forms of entertainment, but at the core of it is Star Wars. And so many people unhappy with the current state. I think that it's a great opportunity to show them all these other stories out there that I've been experiencing for years that brought me a lot of happiness and that I think are very true testaments to the character. I think there's a whole group of people who haven't been exposed to that. And that's what I'm hoping to try to get them into. And I'm obviously going to talk about other stuff too on the channel, because that's kind of putting myself in a box if that's all I talk about is Star Wars Expanded Universe, because that's not all I'm interested in. But I think it's a kind of a kind of a different way to focus if we're not liking the Star Wars we get. Well, here's all this other stuff that we do like, or that you could like.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm stuck with is like, I go through my stuff and it's like, all right, we get what you don't like, but it's like, what do you like? It's like when I see everyone cry about 100 Imperial Star Destroyers in Rise of Skywalker, it's like, well, you're already saying you're boycotting or you hate it. It's like, well, then, like, why are you talking about it? Besides, you can make money on some clicks. And when you make a channel like that, when you're just clickbait clicks off of hate, nerd rage or whatever for a topic, it's like you don't have long term value, in my opinion. It's like, all right, like maybe you're so pissed about one thing, then you move on, but then you keep talking about it over a couple of years when you've very clearly shown like you're not open to anything new from this company. And then at that point you should move on. In my opinion. Um, and when you don't, it makes you look no different, or maybe even worse than the shills, because the shills clearly want an in with the company, regardless of how much they actually like it or not. But when you monetize just hate trains on a on a topic or a company, it's like you kind of got less value than the shills. It weirdly enough, so that's the problem I have, where it's like I feel the fan base has lost focus. There's so many people, whether it's passionately or not, they see the top channels are generally uh, hate content on Star Wars and or other entities like Brie Larson with Marvel, etc. And so everyone thinks they need to jump on that. And like, no one's talking about just like everyone. There's a lot of people I interact with. They're like, I like film, but I look at your content and I don't see anything about you liking film. I just see you hating X company or X entity. And it's like, explore the Criterion Collection, which are critically successful films, regardless of how audience friendly they are. Um, or comics like various formats, or just going back in time on the format you like. No one does that. No one goes to the library. No one spends the money or watches the free Voodoo films, or that's where I'm stuck. Where it's like I'm not getting content. It's like I'm just rather sit in my car and watch anyone's shit, because everyone's just gonna hate you, or if you like something, they're gonna dog you that you're a Disney shill or you're a dog. And it's like, I thought we wanted Star Wars better. That's the point. It's like Last Jedi is clearly a dividing line, but if they do anything to counteract Last Jedi, that should be a step forward narratively. And then you see stuff where it's like, ooh, Darth Ray, and it's like, no one can give it a chance. No one can give a cool looking door, like, oh, she's cutting through trees with her saber. It's like, oh, they're just copying Force Unleashed too. And it's like, okay, like, how much stuff was copied from the EU that Lucas put in the Phantom Menace and the prequel trilogy? It's like, I don't know. I never read it, but you might know.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and Mary Mayhem in the chat says Angus, your video the other day inspired me. I take a similar position tomorrow in my own vid, and I think what she's talking about is the one where you went over your first of all the episode 9 leaks, and then you kind of had like a 3-minute, 4-minute thing at the very end where you kind of talk about how it's important that when we take a look at these trailers and things like that, that we are open and honest in like what we see. And I completely 100% am on board with that. I'm pretty sure that's what she's talking about, at least. But, if we can't be honest with what we're getting from them, I agree with you. Then what are we really doing? We're just hating to hate. So when we see something like The Mandalorian, like for me, I enjoyed that trailer. One of the things it reminded me of was kind of I don't know if you ever played it, but the Bounty Hunter game, when you played as Jango Fett, when he uses all of his all the gadgets and stuff like that in that little bar fight that we get, it was cool, and it kind of brought me back to that kind of feeling. And so I like that trailer. And I think it's important that when we like something or when we think they do something well, we say it. If you still don't want to support them because of what they're doing, that's a different thing. But you got to judge what you see for what you see.
Yeah. Mary, I'm not dissing you or anything. I'm pretty drunk. I've had a good amount of rye, clearing out my bottle, so I'm feeling pretty good. Going to sleep well before work. Um, Catching up with your chat and Mega Jetty, Dorothy X. Um, I appreciate that. I didn't know it affect you that much. I know Sith Kryptonian and some others saw or heard, my video and felt like, yeah, you're saying something how I'm feeling. It's like it's become like the thing about the Phantom Menace is that when everyone is saying the same thing, it's becoming insular. Like we talk, like the only thing that should really link the Phantom Menace is like, hey, we all hated Last Jedi, or at least even if we like Last Jedi, like Chris Knight, we definitely notice the bad rapport from the company and the top creatives. Um, Regardless of liking your content or not. And I'm starting to see like everyone just jumping on the same sentiment, and it's like we're here, we're supposed to be here for different opinions, and I don't see it. With Geeks and Gamers. Besides Ryan, who's an EU and fairly positive creator, his channel and Geeks and Gamers, um, everything is pretty dress right dress, regardless of your politics, your con, entertainment critiques are very much the same, and it's insular, and that kind being the biggest number kind of drives everyone else to try to copy you, thinking they'll get a big boost from that, which is stupid because he's tapped the market. Um,
Yeah. Well, I think that, yeah, that is to some extent. Well, I know, for instance, Jeremy, I know, made a video about The Mandalorian and how he thought that looked awesome and got kind of a little like, hey, what are you doing, man? Um, so it just kind of depends. But I know, for instance, we've got there's actually going to be someone else joining Geeks and Gamers. Should have a video up there relatively soon. Um, who is just going to do a bunch of gaming content, playing like old retro games and things. Um, uh, Uche, who does stuff on Sports Wars, did something on there, basically defending Zack Snyder's DCEU. So there is stuff. There is stuff on there. It doesn't always get the clicks that a lot of the outrage negative stuff does. But that's just kind of how it is, though.
yeah, I hate it, dude. Like I'll be part of calling out something if I'm passionate about the topic, but overall, it's like I want to like shit. I want to steer people to enjoy stuff. It's like entertainment isn't film entertainment isn't doing it, so I'm going backwards. Like I just watched the first Rambo, and I'm blown away. I thought it was gonna be some stupid Vietnam era, shoot 'em up movie, and it's a deep, kind of I guess you say PTSD nowadays type of storytelling and sympathetic character. I'm like, wow, and these are subtle changes to the original content. And so I need to watch part 2 and 3 and 4, and leading into 5 in the theaters. Comics, of course, like so I'm trying to write Meth Gator, and so I'm reading stuff like Hulk. I just bought World War Hulk. Reading Ghost Rider, Daredevil, uh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, etc. It's fun to like, and Breaking Bad, of course, because that's kind of the root of the meth aspect to kind of reference. Like I want to make sure I serve that storytelling well, but not copy the best story of meth thus far. Uh,
It was pretty funny, once the EU got kind of thrown in the trash, and I, kind of not really came to terms with it. It was like, all right, well, I mean, I gotta get into something else. I moved on to comics. That didn't last too long, unfortunately. They went in the gutter. They went in the gutter next.
Yeah, it was when I started, because like it wasn't just I got in the bullshitters because of Star Wars. It's like I like their channel, so I started backtracking their shit, and I'm like listening to Spider-Man talking on and MCU and Marvel going bad and woke. I'm like, what are you talking about? Why are you bitching about Miles Morales? Like, I've read some of Miles Morales. I like it. I don't get the problem. Now, full run, I totally get the problem of at least the first run and the hesitance to watch Into the Spider-Verse because of Miles Morales. But
Yeah, I was surprised by that movie. By the marketing, I didn't think I would like it. Um, and it was, I mean, it was a little childish. Some of the things. Obviously, it's for a big audience. Um, to try to get kids in there, but there was, it was a. I was like pleasantly surprised with the older Peter and stuff like that. It was good.
craziest thing, I don't know if you noticed, but Kingpin, I didn't know so recently, like a week ago. Kingpin is voiced by Sabretooth from the original X-Men trilogy.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, and I'm like,
I
holy
would never have.
fuck.
I would never made that connection.
I thought it was gonna be like I don't know some side Law and Order actor or something like or like Mike from Breaking Bad or something like some just gruff voice kind of guy bring that personality there. It's like what Liv Schreiber or whatever his name is like holy fuck like, that's cool. Didn't know he had that range. So now I'm
Yeah,
looking
that's cool.
that's the thing, I didn't expect it, but Sony, of all companies, is the last bastion for hopeful superhero content. Um, oh,
Listen, so the Sony PS4 Spider-Man game is one of the best Spider-Man stories you'll ever see. Um, whether it's a movie or a comic or whatever, I feel like that storyline in that game is everything I wanted out of it. Maybe I, I didn't like sneaking around with MJ a ton. That was like, all right, get me out of this. But the Spider-Man was awesome.
I have an Xbox, so I haven't played at all this
Oh
new
my
Spider-Man game.
god!
I want to. It's definitely on my list at some point because I love playing Spider-Man 2. Um,
Just wait till PS5 comes out.
um, but yeah, I guess in closing, because I gotta go to bed soon. But what are some of
You're
your favorite?
kicking me out, huh? Kicking me out.
Well, I'm a plumber. I gotta go to work.
Oh, you're good, buddy. We've been going a while.
No. That's just the problem for myself starting at 9. It's just like, I lose some sleep, especially if it's good conversation. Like now it's gone over my normal time. But what are some of the comics like? What are your focus, that you look for, that like me, I'm going, like, generally speaking, I don't support my comic store with new content. Um, they've been putting bundles together of series of short stuff. So like, there's a 2-issue series from Jim Ballant, the artist of Tarot, the Black Witch of the North or Black Witch of the Rose, whatever. Um, I found a Catwoman story, an Elseworld story where Batman's the villain, and I was talking to Ricky Critic about it, and it's like, it's both interesting and like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, no wonder no one knows the story. Um, it's like I'm appreciating the male gaze art of Catwoman, but it's like, you go to her lair and you meet like female Alfred, who's like Brooke or something, and she's like not just a female maid, but she's literally in a skimpy maid outfit, and it's like, okay. And also, Catwoman's attire, various things like one of her suits has furry tits, and I'm like, what would that do for a tactical suit? Like,
who is this for?
and like she's fighting female Two Face or taking him out or her out, whatever. And there's certain poses that are just like super male gazy. I'm like, this is ridiculous, but it's aggro masculine. So I'm like, I don't know how to feel about it.
Yeah, I so like when I first started getting into comics, ironically, um, it was a lot of EVS's stuff. I bought like the volumes of like Flash Rebirth, Green Lantern Rebirth, um, Darkest Night, like things like that. Um, that's how I like really got into it. And then New 52 was like all the content that was like coming out at the time. So I started catching up on all the Batman New 52 and stuff like that. I also bought like some stuff from like the 70s and things just because it was kind of fun to look at. Um, but then like the Rebirth, DC came out with the new Rebirth launch. I never got too into Marvel stuff, to be honest. But I was really on DC. And I was heavily invested in Rebirth because I wanted to be a part of it, and yeah, it got boring after a while. To be honest, like it seemed like the same stories that I'd kind of like heard of before, just written a different way. And I really wanted to be into Doomsday Clock, but that's been so late. Like that's literally like 2 years late now. Like so I stopped buying from my store probably like a year and a half ago or so. Not too long after like the whole Comics Gate thing kicked out, and I just got sick of what was getting put out and couldn't justify spending money on it. Guys like Robbie Rodriguez working at DC, you know,
there's
I
a
miss I miss Cecil's Robbie.
there's a great not edit but cut from a live stream on my channel. Um, I had John Talks and Red Gaze and Wyatt Holiday of Ardana Comicsgate campaign, um, where it's like Robbie Rodriguez's anus in digital dicking. It's a great clip. I definitely recommend everyone check it out. If you don't understand digital dicking, so when I was in the army, um, part of the culture is you leave your hat laying around. Someone will dick it. Someone will draw a dick in your hat. All right, and you only have about 4 layers of material depending on how thick they draw the dick. Um, and that last layer, if someone dicks it, like you need a new hat, otherwise you're gonna get smoked. And we're talking about Robert Rodriguez sending a picture of his anus and how I speculated that was a spread shot, so he either timed it or had someone take it just to show you his devotion.
So much effort involved in that. I can't believe he did that.
And
That is shocking.
yeah, so essentially, dicking, like I said in the hat, I digitally dick someone, and it involved going to the public library, seeing someone logged into Facebook, and dicking their Facebook. So I recommend checking that video out to kind of understand. But it's kind of an army thing that I brought to the civilian world, and I wish I knew War Campaign at the time because it'd been great to transfer that to War Campaign. Digital dicking.
You're lucky that they were just drawing it on there, not actually putting their dicks on your hat or on your cup, which is I've heard been known to happen if you leave it
uh,
alone for too long.
oh, good. Yeah, I wasn't in the Navy, so. No, it's funny. I was in the Navy, but when I was a kid, I wanted to be a submariner, and then at some point, I realized I can't swim, and I never fucking will learn. So, uh,
Well, I tell you what, in the Navy, if you're on a submarine and you have to swim for any reason, probably you're gonna die. If I had to imagine, ain't no Jason Momoa coming down there to save you.
well, it's funny. It's funny you said that because when I was a kid, I love the Navy. We went to the military surplus store at least I don't know every month or two, and I found a sailor bib. I didn't realize it was Russian. Like I saw it had Russian lettering, but I didn't think like Russian. Russians were communists. This isn't modern. None of that came together. So I had like a normal. I'd go to this events. I'd have like a normal sailor. Low ranking sailor. Round hat shaped and this Russian bib. And eventually I found a officer's Russian hat for Navy. And I love K-19. Did not understand communism at all. So, sorry, looking back, sorry to anyone that thought, I'm like, some millennial promoting the Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, or any of that type of stuff. No, that wasn't the thing. It was just I liked Russian submarines, and I wanted to be a sailor, so I just thought it was cool. And then eventually I realized like I can't swim, so yeah, fuck it.
Yeah. It's
uh,
oh, go for it.
oh, I was just gonna say, if there's nothing else you want to address, I'm gonna close this out and send this pack in, not because I want to, just because I need to go to sleep and go to work tomorrow.
Yeah, man, just thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It was fun. It almost 3 hours went by pretty quick, so it must have been a good conversation, at least for me. So thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate
No,
it.
I had fun. Like there was, rarely, I know my limitations, so that's why I usually have at least two or three, if not more, on a panel along with the guest of honor. Because I know my limitations, and sometimes I get stuck and it can get awkward. So it's like it's great to have someone fill the air. Um,
I
but
felt like I talked a lot.
yeah, no, it was great. It was a great back and forth between mainly us two. Snow and Brig gave supplement a little bit, but they had to leave for different reasons. Great channels though, by the way, and yeah, honestly, even though I'm kind of totally out of the loop, I don't know really what the fuck you're talking about. When I watch your channel with EU stuff, I'm like, I'm gonna read this some points, and I'll get it. Um,
Yeah,
and
man, I appreciate that.
no, honestly,
Hello, I cannot hear you, Angus. I don't know if you're still
can you hear
talking.
me?
Oh, there we go. Did you pull your
Somehow
mic out or something?
no, somehow I hit the mute button. I don't know how, but yeah, I was saying, regardless of what the actuality is, there's a perception, and I would say it's growing in the underground. Being a small channel where more and more, um, you know, not liking what Geeks Gamers is doing, and I see Ryan Kinel. Uh, if you don't care about the EU, it's like there's some positivity. It's not just, oh, look at what's happening now. It gets incessant because it's just like, yeah, I already expected it at this point from everyone. It's like I'm of the mindset, because I do it myself. It's like entertainment is not suiting me. I'm going to find shit that will from the past, whether it be DVDs, books, or video, not videos, comic books. And comic books, such a wealth of stories to read, and crossovers. Like, got so much inexhaustible stuff that I'll probably never read it before I'm dead. Movies are kind of different. I would say somewhat the same though, as far as just the amount. But I don't know. If there was enough, if there was, I don't know, an extra 10% of people like, I like this, I wouldn't address it at all. But it's like, I don't want the arguments of the SJWs to become valid in any way. That
I hear what you're saying. Like, oh well, you won't like anything that we put out. That's just like you just want to hate it in cell or whatever. Yeah, I got you. I think that I do think that sometimes negativity is kind of goes viral, right? When you're outraged about something, and when you talk about something you love, maybe not so much. I can tell you that from my perspective, what what I see us trying to do at Geeks and Gamers is, I was approached to come on there, and talk about like my love for the expanding universe, and I think one of the things that we're trying to do as we grow it bigger is just get even more perspectives on there about different things. Um, and definitely not everybody that's a contributor there, agrees on everything. So I think we're really trying to do a little bit more of what you're saying and get a bigger, cast kind of a wider net and talk about a variety of different things instead of, an echo chamber.
yeah, that's the main thing. Like, I want people to disagree. Like, I feel in the minority, surprisingly, with the Rise of Skywalker, trailer and the D23 footage. It's like I feel like I'm one of the only people that's like excited to any degree. But like, it looks like they're actually kind of shifting how I want them to. They're addressing us. They're trying to appease us, and it's like if you can't at least acknowledge it positive in any format, what seems to be what you've been arguing for 2 years, then it's like, what was the point? Then it becomes everyone was right about you. You're just here for money clicks, And I don't even make money yet, I'm still unmonetized. I'm doing this because I like it, And if you ever feel I'm getting out of that line, if I'm just doing content for clicks or whatever, like call me out. Please call me out. Because, the whole point of this was I like film. And I felt and I feel I have a perspective, regardless of how amateur it is. I feel I have a perspective with film criticism and I guess just art criticism in general now, with comic skate and stuff. Um,
So I think anytime you throw the monetization factor in, people are always going to have, kind of the right to question what's going on, right? Anytime anyone's making money from something, right, that's a something that can affect and sway their opinion. I think that there's a difference between doing stuff for the clicks and finding something that your opinion on this gets clicks and doing more of it. So I guess it's just a matter of perspective, I suppose.
yeah, I don't know. I think regardless if it currently is the thing or not, I think there's a system that has rewarded um, polar opinions where it's like I really like this controversial thing, and that half wants to see that, and then the other half wants to see the hate. There's no in between. There's no real, just like they did good and bad, And it's not that I'm going to be like that on everything. It's not that I'm trying to suppress opinions or something. It's just like when it gets like oneness, it's like like do you feel like you're part of something that's about varied opinions, or do you feel like you're part of a drone army? You know, and so I'm just trying to be a voice of change or a voice of reason or logic. If you think it's illogical or it's like you're just focusing on like one little part, whatever. That's it's valid and could be the case, but I think long term, like if it stays the same way it is, I don't see the Phantom Menace last in 5 years, if not a year. I don't see it lasting into December next year if it's just the same old, same old. I think it's definitely going to get splintered because of Last Jedi. I think there's going to be Rise of Skywalker. I think there's going to be people whose channels have been very anti Disney or at least anti Last Jedi who end up seeing this movie and love it or really like it at least. Are going to get called chills, and there's going to be people that really liked what was happening to some degree. And then this movie happened, and they're like, "Oh, it's just appeasing the fans," and then they'll get called reverse shills or something like that. It's just gonna be this huge splintering, and I don't know if it's a kind of a perfecting the Phantom Menace or if it's fracturing. Like CG has the benefit of the focus of the industry doesn't give us what we want, so we can make it ourselves, however much that is. Phantom Menace is just criticism, it's just commentary. There's no unification around let's make our own stuff. Maybe it's the infancy, maybe it takes longer to film, or maybe it's the core of the movement. I haven't figured that out. And I'll never abandon the name or the moniker, but I'll definitely do my part to make it what I think it should be. And what I think it should be is we're all linked off of Star Wars fandom that felt jaded with the company and the product, insulting us. And if I see any improvements, I gotta address it because it's like this is a step forward. We gotta keep, tickling them in the right spot to keep doing these things.
Yeah. Yeah. So last thing I'll say, I know you got to get to bed. I think that, like you said, it was about a love of Star Wars and the treatment from a company. And when someone voiced their opinion they were called an ist or whatever. Um, so like with any community that gets so big, you're going to have so many different people that not everybody is always going to be on the same page. But I would hope that the vast majority of us here in this community, um, since there is that care about just because you had this opinion, that doesn't mean that you deserve to be called that. That we will have that, you know, obviously it's not going to happen for everybody, but the majority of us can have that level of respect to, if someone does love the rise of Skywalker, that we're able to, kind of take that on and be fine with it. Because I think that's really what separates, a lot of us from a lot of them.
Yeah, it's I hate that this is becoming a thing. Like I've always sold the Phantom Menace, and I still do. It's just I I'm stuck kind of seeing like I need to be that voice that's changed, regardless of how much people buy into it. Like maybe a year, maybe 5 years, whatever. People finally click and see my stuff and they're like, oh, this guy is kind of like. Main thing is I don't want to focus on just negative content. I don't just want to focus on look at what Hollywood's doing against what we want. It's like, well, why do you keep noticing Hollywood? It's like, why aren't you trying to fill your life with stuff that pleases you, or at least zero sum game, So that's kind of my motive. Is like, I don't know how much negativity, if at all, I've brought, if not just information. But if I really do have negativity, then I want to bring as much positivity so I balance out. Where it's not just, oh, if you want to crap on X property, go to that channel. It's like, no, I want you to wonder, like Red Letter Media. They're kind of sarcastic about it, but I want you to wonder, will they like will Angus like or hate this movie? This is a reviewer I trust, and will he like or hate it? And there's not sarcasm behind it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, man. And like we said from the beginning, I think that for us to be honest about what we're getting on the screen, I think it's very important to kind of separate that from how we feel about the company.
Yeah, and I did that.
Whether you're gonna use your money or not, like I said, I really like the way the Mandalorian looks. I'm not gonna give them money yet. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
for me, even before the interview, before I hit up Lloyd, like it's very adamant about like it's a very simple request. Disney should give this kid a tombstone. They worked 2 years ago to give an Iron Man tombstone, including working with the Church of England to secure all this and do it properly through the state. So, a 4-year-old that died of a degenerative disease of the brain, who loved your story, who has a picture, regardless of the context behind it, has a picture of Spider holding his tubes that help him breathe. Um, which is very reminiscent of Spider-Man 2, the quintessential Spider-Man story. When you ignore that and ignore a perfect PR layup, I I don't know how to help you.
Yeah.
It's a simple thing. It's like you could just all the bad sentiment you have with Star Wars and or Marvel going forward. You could be like, well, we gave that dead kid's family a tombstone, so he'd be happy. It's
Not
easy.
even gave it to them. Just let them freaking do it.
Let them buy it from us. Like I've argued this. Like you could make a third party company like Touchstone with film, where it's like, oh, we don't want Disney to be associated with non family films. So we'll have this shell company that we run that their label does this adult content. Same thing with the tombstone. You could have a shell company make Disney tombstones. You'd win so much, and you'd have free billboards that people paid for 40 plus years, to advertise. It's like it's a win-win-win. And instead, you're like, yeah, fuck this dead kid, and that's my line in the sand because it's not even the dead kid with Ollie. Unfortunately, it's the fact that you have a history of monetizing a series that makes a point to use death as a motive or a progression. And then you say, we don't want a character associated with death. It's like, it's disingenuous. Toy Story is a great series. I love all three movies. Even though 1 and 2 are.
All three?
Yeah, even though 1 and 2 are
There's four
way
now.
better.
There's four now.
No, no, I haven't seen 4 at all. You know,
Okay.
but
Yeah. God, I thought they were gonna freaking kill him at the end of three.
I was like, "You're killing my childhood." It's worse than like if you had a game hunter come on the range with Simba and shoot him. It's like you're killing my toys. You know. Oh man, like it was really done. It was a really good tease. Um, that's what I want from Disney. Like there's so much properties that Disney has that are just they got you in your pocket. But you do stupid shit like this. It's like however big or small it is. Like I'll wait till the secondary market. I will buy Jumanji to see Skywalker, etc. It's a simple couple $1,000s to make a tombstone. Theoretically you
It's not like
spent
they were asking Tom Holland to come out there and be a damn pallbearer.
yeah. It's
Like,
like theoretically you've spent billions to prop up Captain Marvel.
yeah.
So what's a couple grand to make a tombstone for a kid and put it's just I don't get and I don't know if you've seen the interview, but like we found out from Lloyd the father that not only did he lose his son, but he lost him 2 days before Christmas.
Oh man.
And on
Yeah, I
top of
didn't know
it,
that.
his daughter got sick with the same disease. Girls take longer to actually show signs. His daughter got sick and got put in the same room next to the same bed that his son died in.
Jesus.
And it's just like, Jesus, this guy's got 4 other healthy kids that he's taking care of. And so, it's not just a Spider-Man thing. Like Spider-Man is the kind of core that made me know this guy, but I talk to him when I can, and it's like there's some good stuff coming for him. However small it really is in grand scheme, Disney probably won't appease him at all. But I slash war campaign, we got some good stuff coming his way. Grocery, think of us. We're here for fans and for real people. So look forward to that at some point. Ryan,
It's good to hear, man. That's good to hear.
I just want to know what your favorite comic hero is, and story you would push people to read.
Ooh, my favorite comic hero. Um, let's see. I would say that my favorite comic hero is probably Nightwing. Um, as far as a story recommendation, um, the one I'm most familiar with is really the New 52 Nightwing, which I can't tell you which volume to pick up or anything like that. But to me, Nightwing um, combines. He's like the combination of Batman and Superman, right? It's what if he was someone who was mentally broken kind of by the death of his parents like Batman, but instead of that negative force that Batman is, a negative force for good, he consistently is able to have this very positive outlook on life, very much like Superman or like the traditional Superman that we get. Um, so I know a lot of people think that Dick Grayson's a little bit of a joke, but I think that Nightwing is kind of one of the most compelling characters, and the differences between him and Batman are very distinct. And although I wasn't a huge fan of Titans, the series on DC Universe, for many other reasons, the fact that it was criticized because Dick Grayson said, I can swear on you, you don't care, right? Because Dick Grayson said, "Fuck Batman," right? Don't understand the story of Dick Grayson and why he would say that. So if you're gonna get into a new character, try Nightwing.
Okay, no, that's interesting. I didn't know what to expect from you. I maybe thought Marvel just because Marvel has Star Wars. Um, I'm currently because Meth Gator, which is inspired by Red Gaze, covering the Tennessee article about hey, don't please telling people don't flush your meth, you'll make meth gators. Uh, I that for whatever reason I was at work shoveling some underground demo, and I thought meth gator like there's something here, and it's just like, aha, and it's definitely a Daredevil team in team kind of montage trope. But I don't know. I want to do some funny shit. I definitely want to reflect some Breaking Bad, mainly. Um, but
That
yeah,
sounds fun as hell, man.
yeah. Like think of Venom or Hulk crossing Breaking Bad. That's kind of the gist of Meth Gator. Um, Not necessarily a cook, but part of the society, the underground of meth, going forward. Um, I'm doing my research because I'm new to comics, so I'm reading Ghost Rider. Watched the two Ghost Rider movies recently. Spirit of Vengeance, again, I really agree with Red Letter Media. They really hit the nail on the head, in my opinion, with my sentiment. Where I'm like, there's some camera work problems with this movie when it's not action, but I didn't mind it. I just thought it was too short. And it's just all of a sudden like I'm Ghost Rider in the end. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, there's more to tell here, and like your crazy, transformation was actually fun, and or at least cringy fun, and I don't know, it's just kind of all over the place. Like the action, the last sequence on the trucks and stuff is really good, but it doesn't match with
What do you
this.
think about? Did you watch the what was that ABC show?
Oh, Shield.
Agents of Shield. Yeah.
No,
What do you think about him?
Ricky Critic keeps pushing that show on me, especially because I've become a convert to Ghost Rider, and I'm reading different iterations of them. And he told me about Shield, and I'm like, I've seen the meme. I didn't know that was a thing, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's Mexican Ghost Rider, which is okay, but
He drives like a Charger or something.
I'm just like I found a comic book at Columbus Library. They usually just have new comic books, and they have one from Marvel where it's like Cosmic Ghost Rider, which is actually Frank Castle, who died and became Ghost Rider, and then he died and became Cosmic Ghost Rider for Thanos. And for some reason, that Thanos dies, and he realizes he needs to destroy Thanos arbitrarily. And I'm just like, I love Thanos like Glove Quest stories, but you gotta do them right, or worse than like Dante's Inferno is intriguing not just because of the dialogue for the time, but when you adapt it modernly, it reads totally different. So you get the game Dante's Inferno, which is like you actually have a worm with tusks and stuff. It's just so much potential. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I appreciate you coming on. There's so much more to address. I'm going to start reading some EU stuff, and we'll converse more about that. It's going to be fun. Again, I see it as one of the few positive channels in the Fandom Menace, and I appreciate that so much because I go to work, look at my sub feed for the last day and a half, and I'm like, there's nothing I really want to watch because it's just all negative. No one's talking about anything they like. It's just current stuff that's angry. And Ryan Outpost, regardless of whatever critiques he gives for the Fandom Menace, Star Wars content, he's ultimately here to give us, hey, the EU, and I'm trying to do that as a new follower with comics, and hopefully we can, you know, dictate at least a little bit of a change in the Phantom Menace progression forward. Thank you again for coming on. Any last words you want to say to the audience before we go off?
Hey, just thanks guys for coming hanging out with us for a while. It didn't stay maybe as focused as we originally thought it would. We got to talk about a lot of different stuff, but it was awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's how it goes. Usually on my channel, it's whatever kind of comes up, and you're a great guest, one of the best, and I look forward to having you on, not just for repeat for Utter Chaos, but for some precedent kind of just roundtable discussions like I do on Fridays with everybody. Um, so maybe we'll have you on next Friday. I don't want to rush you and have you on 2 times in a week, but maybe we can
Yeah,
come on
God,
next.
that'd be just terrible for your audience, man. Overexposed on that.
No, it's great for you. It's just I don't
I'm
want to
just kidding.
I don't want to overload you, because I know my channel has a certain shtick or style that not everyone wants to do, or not everyone wants to do weekly or bi-weekly. So, but yeah, you got an open invitation. I really enjoyed this conversation outside of your content. So, I think because I'm interested in Dark Empire, if I can read it fast. I'll try to read Thrawn trilogy into Dark Empire because I know it's the like kind of the prequel story before. So thanks again, and thank you all in the chat. I know it didn't really flow after a certain point, chat wise, but Christy, hope to have you on Friday along with ETEP and Adam, some Alita fans. I actually hate Alita, but again, I'm here to have a open discussion and appreciate what y'all bring
So much
and
negativity. So much negativity.
the enthusiasm y'all bring, despite my hatred of that movie. Uh, and yeah, go check out RK Outpost. Go check out Christy. I don't know if she has like a name on this, and some other people. Sith Kryptonian actually came in. No, sorry, it says Spawn Jones. Thanks again, and see y'all later. See y'all Friday for sure. 6:30 to 8:20. Sith Group Tony should actually be back for his Senate stream. I may come on. I'm not sure. We'll hammer that out. But yeah, I'll try to send RK Outpost his way for some varied content. Take care. Have a great night.
All right, see you guys.